you bring into the table, be it ideology or be it background, socioeconomics, race, the whole thing, religion, you're always like, you're always like noticing where the macro media is failing. You ever notice that? So like when I watch the media, because of my politics and because of my worldview, my Judeo-Christian faith, I'm always feeling as though, they're always trying to take jabs. This is my perspective. Like they're always, if they can, if they can work in like an insult, they will, like that. Like when I go to a movie, sometimes I'm like loving the movie. You know what I mean? I'm just really into the movie. And then I feel like, man, they'll just take an unnecessary crack at a Christian or an unnecessary crack at like a more conservative minded person. And I'm always noticing that. And I always wonder to myself, and it's hard to get perspective on this, but I always notice, is that me just blowing something out of proportion because I'm like hypersensitive to it? Because I admit I am. You know what I mean? Or do you think it's a combination of things? You know what I mean? Like in other words, what we're bringing to the table.
I think if you pick it up, then it's real.
But I meant like, is it fair enough for me to say that that's pervasive? Because that's the thing. Like I mean, from my perspective, I think it's pervasive. But I've talked to some friends of mine who don't share my politics, don't share my background, and they're always like, "Oh, it's not that big a deal." I don't notice that much. And I'm wondering to myself, that's probably because it doesn't rub them raw. Do you know what I mean? Like when I hear it or when I see it, it rubs me raw because it's like it gets to my personhood. But the average person's like they might not even, that might just fly right over their head. Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting perspective.
But see, my brother-in-law kind of like that. I may say something, because I love talking about like the Bible, for example. And I consider myself a student of the Bible. But I may allude to biblical, things just in general conversation, but he'll take it serious, right? But everybody else in the room just, it didn't mean that much to him. But he'll be like, hold up, don't play like that. You know what I mean?
Well, he's not a Christian. He's not a Christian.
Like, something wrong with him. But I can respect him though, because I can say, in my perspective is, if he's serious about this and he's sensing a little disrespect, then it's not really a bad thing that he stands up and speaks about it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I see your point, and I tend to agree with you. I guess what I was kind of seeking was some perspective, because you know how you can, like nowadays, it's like it's hard to know how much conditioning is happening to you. Because, for example, 20 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, I don't think I don't think it would have been as instinctual for me to put up all these guards and stuff like that. And I still try to fight doing that, particularly when I'm face to face with people. I have a lot of real firm opinions, and me and you have gone round and round on that. But like when I'm actually in front of a human being, I really try to listen to them, to learn something from them, to glean perspective. But we're really in a time where the walls are closing in by way of like the compartmentalization of people, and we at every turn are being told to pick a side, compartmentalize, tribalize, get into tribalism rather. It's like it's everywhere, and it feels as though sometimes, I don't know if you feel a temptation. I think you feel a temptation less than me to do this based on what you said in the past, but it feels as though you almost have to do that. Like the stakes are so high, and you can kind of get pushed into a camp, even if you don't even completely want to be a part of that camp.
Absolutely.
But you just are, because, you feel like, I don't know why you feel that way. It's probably a complicated answer, but you feel as though you got to pick a side, and you don't like about 50% of this group you're getting lumped into, but there it is. You know what I mean? Whereas I don't think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would have felt as much like that.
I think it's easy to sit on the outside if you realize what's actually happening. You see what I'm saying? You see the game that's playing. Like I said, once you see that, it's like, for an example, politics. Once you realize, even like Trump said, the fake news. Like when I see the news now, I don't even watch the news, man. I'm telling you, this TV probably hadn't been on any TV channel other than maybe Netflix. And I don't know how long.
Me too, man.
But when I do see like news clips, I did see like when the thing happened in Las Vegas, for example. I mean, that stuff just completely, I just couldn't be more turned off. You know, I see it, and I'm like, this. If this is not a political event, I don't know what is.
I agree with you, Ron. I
It's
agree
so a
with you, buddy.
shame that we're living in a country where this kind of crap is actually
Do
they
you
can pull
even?
this off. I mean, the actors be bad, the stories that they be coming out be conflicting. You
Mhm.
know, it's so incongruent. I'm like appalled that they're even able to pull this off.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I,
are
I
we
agree with you.
animals, like ignorant animals, to be able to buy this and think that this is real?
I
Some guy
know.
carrying an army brigade versus worth of auxiliary for to shoot out of a window. I mean, come on, man. If
Well,
it's not an
I don't
agenda
know.
based,
I don't know if you I don't know if you've noticed this because you tend to notice stuff like this, but there's a huge underswell of like commentary now on the internet that's basically exposing. First of all, a lot of the stuff we're told about these things aren't even on the up and up.
no,
You know what I mean?
no.
They're not even like, first of all, like take that instance, and there's a million different things. I feel like, first of all, everything you said, I agree with actually. And the media is I don't trust them from any direction now. And the TV never gets turned on. I like we said, I never turn on my TV. But it's interesting on social media, you get these little clips, and I don't know what's worse. You know what I mean? Because you can get like a little clip, it's out of context. Somebody's clearly trying to manipulate you. But the interesting thing is this stuff you're talking about. It's so blatantly obvious that they're like spinning a narrative of some kind. And granted, I don't know all the details, and I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where they're wrong. I wouldn't be able to prove it. But my basic human common sense is offended, like you were just saying. This is obviously not on the up and up. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of conflicting emotions in that moment. First of all, you're grieved. Second of all, it pains you that we're living in a world like this. You recognize the social problems that brought it about, so the cultural problems, and then lastly, you just realize you're being lied to. Like as a grown man, these people are mindfully lying. They're mindfully manipulating.
It is lying, and that's the thing about like I said, our society. You have to be a student, and you have to know that the general public is being lied to. I mean, it's even in the good book. That the world be fooled. You have to use your brain. You have to discern the real prophet from the false prophets. You know what I'm saying? So how do
Yeah,
you discern? You got to seek the knowledge yourself. And so we're living in an age where there is no excuse because we have access. And I don't think it's going to be that way forever. But we're living
man,
in an
we
age
agree
where
again. We agree
if you
again.
don't know, you can simply just ask Google. That's as simple as it is. I was just telling my son, I was like, you're born in a generation where you want something. If it could be in China, you could just click a couple buttons, and it's at your door in a week.
Amazing.
You know what I mean?
I know sometimes we're so used to this, it can the novelty of that can wash over you. It's amazing. You're right, and the onus is on us. Like the responsibility is on us. I thought about this. Me and you both have a fear of God, Rondale. You know what's interesting about this? I thought about this the other day. It was a real interesting conversation I had with some friends of mine. If our moral and humanity had evolved with the same speed of our technology, just imagine what kind of people we would be and what kind of world we would be living in. But somehow that did not happen. We have this technological world that's baffling. It can take your breath away sometimes. Like I said, you can take it for granted because I didn't grow up in it. I didn't grow up in all these, just like you were saying. I remember like encyclopedias. I remember all that stuff. I was a young boy, but I remember a world where you didn't have that information at your fingertips. But somehow you would think that as we better ourselves in this way, we would better ourselves mind, body, and soul. But that does not seem to be the pattern. And it's a really interesting
I think
conundrum.
that it is. I think that there is kind of like what they would say a renaissance or an awakening going on. And I think that kind of goes back what you were talking about earlier as far as a Christian, I think that, because we're living in an age of information and we have a lot of access to information and we can now question things. So when people question things, they can get an answer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think, that's the challenge, for Christians in the next generation, the next era is that I think it has to be, just going to have to move more towards principle. You know what I mean?
Like
focusing on.
what's that look like in your mind? That's interesting to me. Like when you say that, I like the sound of that. I'm just interested in what you mean when you
Well,
say
what
that.
I'm saying is that,
Principle.
all right, you gotta, in my perspective, there's people who, like you had a show called The Atheist Antidote, right?
Right.
So to me, the antidote to the atheist is to appeal to its senses, to appeal to what makes sense to them in a practical sense. So I can say to them, for example, if I say tithes, for example, pay your tithes. A lot of people are saying, oh, you just want my money. You just want my money. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But if you tell them that the way tithes can work is in a practical sense, like such as, let's say God or the universe, however you want to put it, wants to bless this person there. And they have to bless, in order to bless that person or this church, this entity, or this organization, he has to bless it. You're the conduit. So he's got to go through you. So he knows if you're willing to, you're the type of person that's giving $1,000 away to this church or this nonprofit every month. And God, the universe, is trying to bless these people. And you're the conduit for the blessing is going to come through you. See what I'm saying? So that's the reason why you want to be obedient to giving.
I agree.
Because it's also an energy thing. Everything that goes out comes in. Everything circulates. You see what I'm saying? So whatever you want to put out good energy, you get back good energy. You put out kindness, you get back kindness. You want to get money, you put out money, get back money. Whatever in the world that you're trying to receive, you want to give too. So I believe if you break things down, the morals and the principles that they're trying to teach in the word of Christ, and there's a lot of messaging in the Old Testament. There's a lot of real principle messages. But I think when you say things are, this was a real factual event and you can't prove it, you're going to lose a lot of people. So, and that's where I think that Christianity is going.
So in some ways you would almost make the case that that's in your mind where the Christian church or Christian history has gone wrong, is they've like pitched their tents or like dug their stakes in too many grounds that are, you think, factually quicksand or that they don't have as much solid footing.
The more you learn the Bible, the more you can pick it apart. Because what's being taught is breadcrumbs. That's how you can feed a multitude with a loaf of bread. You feed them breadcrumbs. So you give them bits and pieces of knowledge to keep them coming back. You see what I'm saying?
When you say, and I'm curious about this, when you say pick it apart, I'm sure you mean something specific there. Like, what are you trying to say? Pick it apart, like what? Like pick it apart.
Like, if you try to say, for an example, and I'm bringing this up because I have conversations with my Jehovah's Witness neighbors. They come, and I sit down and have a conversation with them. But the point I'm trying to say is that we were talking about Adam and Eve. And I said, well, the story of Adam and Eve, even in the story of the Bible, is not trying to suggest that they're the first human beings on the planet. You see what I'm saying? Even in the beginning of the story and at the end of Genesis 2, when it's proceeding in Genesis 3, the Bible writer always tell you what's going to happen, and then it manifests, so then it happens. So, so it's saying is just telling you that it's a story about a man and a woman who becomes man and wife, and they're leaving their father's property, the property of their mother and their father. It's in the word. So then it goes through the story. So it tells you what's going to happen. Now it actually goes through. So Adam and Eve, when they, for an example, when they left the garden, they had two sons. They applied the knowledge. The knowledge was, of course, sexual relations. They had sons. Them sons went off. Cain killed Abel, but Cain went off into the garden. We know that. And Cain continued to talk to God. He begged of God. God protected him with the mark on his head. But when he went off, it says he went off into the land of Nod, and he found himself a wife. And then they went off and had a son named Enoch and built the city of Enoch. Then Adam and Eve also had a son named Seth. And Seth went and found him a wife as well. So what I'm saying is those wives that they're talking about are seeds from other tribes that are existing in the world at the time. But Adam and Eve is a lineage because, see, once you take the part of the knowledge, sexual relationship, the tree of life, the lineage, the generation. So that's why a genealogy starts after Adam and Eve. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
I do, and I think that's all true. It's interesting too because I just read Genesis, and I mean, we'll get into a rabbit trail here that the average person might not follow, but it's an interesting. I've really been kind of fascinated by the Nephilim. I don't really know actually the biblical pronunciation of that. I've been looking for it. The Nephilim. It's a real throwaway line, and I think it's right around chapter 3, and it's like the wording is that the sons of Adam, or it's like the sons of Adam. Like this is the wording, something like the daughters of Adam were pleasing to the sons of man, and then it speaks of this race or this people called Nephilim, and they're like almost described as like angelic creatures, but it's a real elusive terminology. And I know if you start reading the Gnostic Gospels, which a lot of Christians don't do, but I've personally done, you know, they really exaggerate this so-called creature. But anyway, that neither said. I love the book of Genesis. I think it's a synopsis of the Bible. I've always thought that. I think it's a really kind of like a
is critical. It's
it is. It's actually
about it's about colonialization. Colonialization.
Well, I happen to think. I mean, again, I happen to think it's
Abraham.
about a lot of things.
Abraham was from Mesopotamia. Abraham had a Egyptian slave, maid servant, who he had a child by, because his wife, she wasn't patient enough, and she thought she was getting too old to have a child. So
he
had
Hagar?
a child by his.
Is this Hagar's story?
Hagar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very, very critical because Hagar
sure is. It splits a branch in the Abrahamic religion that transcends to our lifetime. That's the Arab.
It's deep, bro. It's deep. It's telling you this. The Genesis is basically the manifest destiny for Israel in the land of Canaan, because Jacob is Israel personified in the Bible.
Right.
And Joseph was sold into slavery by his 11 brothers. Now keep that in mind. Sold into slavery, and to where? In Egypt. To an Arab, and the Arabs sold him to the Egyptians. So we've been told that the Egyptians were enslaving the Jews. But no, it turns out that Abraham, the founder of is supposed to be the father of the Hebrew, or the father of the Jews, he actually had an Egyptian slave. Now, what happened to that Egyptian slave? When Sarah did have her child, which was Isaac, right? She said, Ishmael had to go. So she cast him out. Now, that the Bible writer used the word cast. He don't use the word cast in Adam and Eve. It says he sent them out of the garden, not cast them. For those who say that they were cast out of the garden, they weren't cast out. They were aware, they were brought conscious. They even said, God said he become one of us. Adam became one of us to know good and evil, right? So what it's telling you,
which is a whole interesting conversation in and of itself.
Oh, bro, I'm telling you, my man, he couldn't leave the door, bro. We was out there for 2 hours. He can't. I also, it's all here. It's all facts.
I find these conversations fascinating, just like you do, Rondale. And the truth is I do agree with you. I think there's enormous wisdom, and I think it's a shame that people think of them as, dusty
because people are telling people that they're facts. You see what I'm saying? See, it's truth, but it's a difference between truth and fact.
Well, here's an interesting thing. All my life that's been the debate, right? So, and even your fellow Christians, a lot of people don't know this if they're not a Christian, but even Christians fall into various camps on that. It's not like we're homogeneous. We're not all of one thinking. We're not, people have different opinions on that. But here's the interesting thing for me. I know you and me might actually part ways a little bit here. I got to an age, I don't know, I was around 30 or something, and I stopped having those debates. Like, I would still have those discussions because I find any discussion fascinating. But prior to that, man, I was in, you mean, the Atheist Antidote channel. I was in I was all fire breathing, and I was like a fire breathing dragon if you disagreed with me. But I stopped being that way, and what changed me about it was to me, I didn't see how it was relevant. I stopped seeing. So in other words, I'll give you a real good example. So let's say you're a young earth creationist, right? Let's say you are. And let's say you sit side by side with a Christian who believes that God brought about that same event through what we now call evolution. And let's say he sits beside a guy who is even more quote unquote out there with all this stuff. I mean, I've heard endless things. At the end of the day, I just don't see I don't really think it's that big of a deal. Like my point is, I think the Spirit of God and I think the Word of God can speak to every single one of those people.
It is a big deal because
see, I don't think it is a big deal. I'm gonna
tell you why. It's all right. First of all,
so you're just so we're clear, because I want to know where so that we're talking about the same thing. So you're saying if a person is misguided, well, so according to the way you look at it, if they're misguided in some of these ways, this is like pivotal, right? This cannot go on. This has to be corrected.
The doctrine
is that what you're saying?
It's the operating system by how people think and behave. See what I'm saying? So if Abraham, who's the founder of civilization, you know what I mean? If he had slaves and he can have a child by a slave.
Yeah, but you're talking about very nuanced things. I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about, but just for the sake of this conversation.
What I'm saying is the indoctrination. How it's like running your computer on Windows XP or iMac or Mac. It's the difference. So it's like, okay, we're going to take Windows XP out. That's how you were operating before. You were operating under, you were worshiping the sun and the harvest. You were operating as a community. You know what I'm saying? You were thinking this way. And now we're going to give you a new doctrine. And from that doctrine, you're going to worship differently. You're going to operate differently as a human being. What you think is going to happen to you after life is different. You see what I'm saying? So all your cultures, it's in there in the story of Jacob. Jacob, when he went into the Hivites and Shechem, and they slaughtered all the Hivites because Shechem, wanted Dinah, and they felt like he defiled her, and they made him get circumcised, and then 3 days later they slaughtered everybody. Well, when they took the woman and the children and the women, he made them all round them up. And he said, get rid of all your jewelry and your foreign gods. And then he took them and he buried it according to King James, under the Tibereth tree. So, and then they went off, and it said terror, it surrounded everywhere they went, but no one suspected or no one sought after Jacob. Jacob, we know, is the personification of Israel. So nobody, like all of this stuff going on in the world right now, but nobody ever really, you're not even allowed to question. Is it Jacob? You better not even question it. You see what I'm saying? So the Bible is the truth, and it's telling you in secret. It's not supposed to be, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to colonialize you. We're going to reprogram you. We're going to take over. That's not what it is. These people, Christopher Columbus came in with this, you know what I mean? And the revelation occurred. So the end of age for those human beings, for the Aztecs, for an example, who believed in the end of the age, they were absolutely right. At the end of their age happened the new world, at the beginning of the new world order. So
well,
the kingdom
I will tell you this. It's very clear to me based on this conversation. You probably already know this. We do part ways a little bit theologically. I mean, that's safe to say. However, my point remains the same. I know, and it sounds like we disagree, but this is honestly what I think. I look at the Word of God as a living. I think it's very, very different. A lot of people, I don't think, believe this, but I do. I think it's a living scripture. I think it's very alive. I think it's just as much alive for me as it was for the saints of old. And for that reason, Well, first of all, like a lot of the stuff, and they're fascinating conversations. I could talk about so many things with you, Rondale. We could go down a million different rabbit trails. It's such an interesting conversation. But in my opinion, a lot of the way you're interpreting scripture right now, in my opinion, is potentially based on your worldview. I think your worldview is laying over scripture. And I think
Bro, it's supposed to. It's a.
it
It's
is.
a.
It
The
is. It
scripture, like
lends
you
me. It
said,
lends me
is
to an
a. It's the
interesting. I
scripture.
mean, I know. I know that, and I'm
You said
guilty of
it
that
too,
too.
and I
I'm
agree with you.
guilty.
I agree. My best friend say the same thing. Chance, he'll say the same thing.
I mean, I'm
It's
just so you know,
supposed to
I'm just
be
as guilty of
living,
it.
and not that Christ, the second thing, and he was being, as they say, tempted, and he said, what did he say? He said, "Feed not on bread alone," because that's when they said turn to bread. He said, "Written." So everybody is well. If it was written, let's try Christ, because Christ said 3 times it was written. I know that Christ was taken up when he was a child, but beyond all of that, he said it is written that man should eat not by every word that proceedeth from God. So what he's saying is God is he's going to be lasting. He's not dead. His word is always living. The word they said.
Hey, Ron, if you can hear me, you're breaking up a
Even
little bit.
you
Are you hearing
thousands of
that?
years ago, the word was is that there was a kingdom
Hey,
was
Ron.
going to be. So when you go to
Hey, Ron, you're breaking up a little bit on my end.
San
Are
Francisco,
you hearing any of that? Or
right?
you're like, can you hear me?
Lead you
Can
to
can
what?
you can you hear me,
Angelic
man?
go
You're
to
breaking up
trying
on
to
this
manifest
end.
their vision on earth. That's what we're living. Huh?
Yeah, can you hear me? Because you're breaking up a little bit on my end. Do you have any intel on that? You're
What
breaking
was you
up
saying?
like you're. Can you hear me, man? Or am I breaking up with you too? Because you're breaking up, like your signal is breaking up. I'm only hearing like one out of every 5 words or something like that. Can you hear that? Or how about
Yeah,
me?
we probably
Can you hear me pretty good, or is it
going
breaking
to
up?
break up. We probably talk about
I wonder.
the
Let me see if I could start this again.
so I gotta switch.
Sorry, guys. Bummer. You back in business there, man?
Yeah, I'm back.
Do you have any idea
Well,
what was going on there? Is that what do you think that is? Do you have any intel on that?
no, I think it's just was running too long.
Yeah?
And yeah, and I my battery, I was on my little iMac or whatever, but the charger doesn't work as fast as the battery dies. I
Uh
don't know. I was like on 5%, so I don't know. it was getting low anyway.
So you on like a phone now or something?
Yeah, I have another. I mean, you know, my main computer that I work on here, but yeah, I put it on cell phone because it was most convenient right now.
Yeah,
Just
that's
coming.
cool, and I can hear you real well too. I'm sorry about that, man. That sucks. Hey, man, let me ask you a question because there's like I said, there's a million different things I could chat with you about. And before we like hang up, let's talk, and I'll like stop the broadcast or whatever. But let's talk about the worldview because I do agree with you. I don't know how you want to play that, but I think your best bet, and we could talk about this later, but I think your best bet is to really take seriously like the Black Swan brand and to totally brand that out. But that's my opinion. And it's kind of tricky because that worldview page is kind of like a hybrid between our two audiences. So to be respectful of them, I don't even know what to do. Like maybe we just explain to them that I don't know, that we're not going to do that anymore or whatever the case may be. But
What you know what I'm saying, like I said, with the worldview is always, you know, like I said, it was to interview people. It's to get to understand cultures through the scope of people. So like I say, like when I went to Barcelona, for example, all the running around, you know, bike riding and all that kind of stuff, the things you see, it didn't compare to the conversations that I had with the hosts. You know, you get to learn about his upbringing. You learn about the culture. He was talking about the Catalonian people and, you know, their background. And we talk about the Visigoths and the Moors. And, you know, I mean, we was, you know, I mean, it was such much more of an enriching thing
sure.
with which I got from the people, you know. So that's what the worldview is. It's about the world was a view about interviewing what you would think is an ordinary person, but they have an extraordinary story. So like this, the one of the ladies I'm about to order to interview here coming up soon is Gisette, and she moved from Argentina to Barcelona. What she just got fed up. She just felt like Hugo Chavez had just got sick or whatever, and she was like, you know, I got to get out of here. I just don't have a good feeling about the future. She just went to the airport. She just had enough money to buy a ticket. She bought a ticket, and she actually did some finagling with her visa, as far as she came over on a student visa, but she didn't have any money. She said she called her people and told her like she was leaving. I ain't had no money. They ran up to her, gave her the money they had, you know, whatever, like, you know, whatever change they had in their pocket, and she left with like $125 and just left. And her story that proceeds from there is just amazing on how things just fall in place. And, you know, she went through some difficult times, but it's just, I'm always bumping into people where it's like, my goodness, your story, you
No,
know,
I
you
know.
need to,
I agree
you
with
know,
you. I have a very similar experience, and I agree with you too that my travels in Europe and around the world, it's fascinating. You almost wish you could have like a mini, you know, film crew every time you're having one of those organic conversations. I've often wondered, I wonder if they're special and they're unique just because that isn't the case. You know what I mean? Some things maybe are never meant to be broadcast, but part of you always thinks, man, I wish it was because it's so rich and so interesting. And hey, as a side note, so here's an interesting thing, man. Let me ask you, where are you at? So as you're assessing things right now, we're living in a really, really interesting time. There is some in my opinion, there's some things that we're living through right now that I personally have not seen before. Power structure shifts in the equilibrium of, I mean, even the very structure of our own nation, I think is up for grabs. I mean, I don't think I have a lot of more liberal leaning friends that I talk to now. And the one thing that we don't agree on a whole lot, but the one thing we do agree on is that the old paradigms, the old ways of defining things and the old ways of assuming things, and even the old ways of looking at power are shifting. They're just totally shifting right now, right before our eyes. I think we're living in an interesting time. What is your assessment? We got a lot going on in the world politically, and I know sometimes you and I disagree, but I would love to hear your take.
well, you know, for me, like I said, right now it's about being profitable, right? Because the politics is ugly. You know, the social environment is being corrupted by race and politics. And you know, like I said, when we look at the news and we see what they're doing, once you're aware of what's happening, then you can't be played because you know what's happening. You see what I'm saying? And so I think once you realize what's happening, you're like, okay, what do you got to focus on? You got to focus on what really matters.
Yeah, you're right about that.
You got to focus on putting your family in the best position possible.
Isn't that an interesting thing? I do agree with you, and it's true for me too, man. That what you're just saying is very true for me. But isn't it an interesting thing because that's been true of every man that's ever lived, and yet at the same time, it doesn't. On some level, it doesn't excuse them from the macro things that are happening in their time. Do you know what I mean? So, like, in other words, it's always been the job and the duty, the macro number one duty of a man to be caring about his family and so on and so forth. But there's also these things that are happening in your time. And I feel as a man of God that you're responsible to. It's really hard. I haven't made up my mind, like, how much responsibility a man has to that. Like, is it okay that he just washes his hands of that and he's like, whatever, I'm just going to focus on me and mine? Or is that not okay? That's always been an interesting.
It's like,
do you know what I mean?
When
you know that dilemma.
When you're in an airplane, right, and the airplane's going down, they're going to tell you what the first rule is: you got to save yourself. First rule is you got to don the mask yourself. Right. You can't save a life. You can't save a soul if you're dead yourself. You see what I'm saying? So the first thing to do is, as a man, you got to take care.
Well, again, I totally agree with that. We have zero disagreement about that. But I just meant, like, exactly what you were saying. Like, the temperature's so high. There's so many lies. There's so much nonsense. You know, I got a lot of people in my life that are just like, I don't care. I wash my hands of it altogether. What are your? I mean, I've never felt comfortable with that myself. But I kind of almost. On the other hand, I kind of respect it and I understand it. Like, I understand just being like, whatever.
When you have children, how can you not care? When you have,
right, when you have, exactly. That's my point.
For me, as an African American man, and I don't know, this could be as valid to you. I don't know that. I don't mean to say it to be biased, but I'm just saying when we see the images, because it could be happening in the same in your community, but in the African American community, we see images constantly of the police state. Right, getting away with executing black people, you know what I mean, without due process. So what I'm saying is you could tase them, you can shoot them in the leg, you can shoot them in the butt, but they're being lethal about it constantly without a shadow of a doubt. So what that does is it's a form of terrorism, because it does is it makes us now, all right, we got to stay home, right? Hey, we got to keep a closer eye on where our boys at. We telling our boys what they can't do, and what, you know, behave like this. You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make is that for me, I'm looking at my country like, okay, my country don't want to see me do well. It's, as a 38-year-old man, you can ask my wife. It's the people are not conditioned to see African American men do well. They don't want to. Even in a black family, it's a problem where you will see that people really don't want to see you do well. You know what I mean?
Are you referring to like your own family?
I'm talking about everywhere. People really don't want to see you.
Right. Yeah, I know you're talking about like more than that, but I just wanted to be clear. That last statement you were talking about, even your own family?
It's something that is programmed. It's a doctrine in everybody. And a lot of people operate, they don't really know it. But
well, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this because I don't know that I'm in agreement with that, but I'm curious by it. What makes you say that we're all programmed to not want an African American to do well? I search my heart. I search my own heart for that truth.
We can only grow to a certain extent. So, if you want to know, do you want to know in the terms of a community or as an individual?
What makes you feel like you basically mean like a society? I'm assuming you mean.
I'm gonna tell you this way. Like this. Here's a good example because of the video that you had posted on the Worldview, and I've been seeing it circulating online where the young lady, she's like,
I liked it because there was like two perspectives. Yeah. It was really interesting because it was like the entrepreneur. In fact, like as the lady was saying things, I was like, yeah, I agree with her. And then when the entrepreneur started speaking, I was like, wait, he convinced me. I agree with him.
Yeah.
It was like both people had like a good point.
Yeah, because both they were both true. So, but her point was the thing about her though is she was not talking about a black business. She was actually talking about a startup business. Okay, because she didn't consider the fact that if you go to McDonald's, and I've been to McDonald's plenty of time, and I asked for a vanilla ice cream, and they said we don't have, our ice cream machine is broke. Well, you don't go and say, well, that's the reason why I don't shop at McDonald's or shop with white people, because every time I show up, the ice cream machine is broke. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that she's not labeling the entire race because she had a bad experience. But even when you do, and she's absolutely right, sometimes when you go to a mom and pop spot, a startup spot, because they're operating on such a tight budget. I've seen it myself. I wasn't in the restaurant business, but I seen I had a really good Jamaican friend who was in it, right? And I seen what he went through. That man, he worked like a slave. I'm telling you, he barely even went to sleep. But if you showed up, his hours of operation, like she said, was like about 10 o'clock, right? But sometimes she would show up and he wouldn't be there at 10 o'clock. And that isn't really good business. But what was he doing? He got tied up at the equipment shop or something. He was out somewhere doing business. And trust me, he was trying to get back to the shop. He almost killed himself to get back to the shop. But the people at the shop don't know what he was going through. And so what I'm saying is they don't have access to a lot of resources. They don't have access to the funds. He might be able to afford to buy a pound of chicken wings. So he might run out of chicken wings. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I do.
We have to have a compassion that this is a startup business. Let me help him get to the next level where he can be more dependable.
It was interesting. Yeah, it's true what you're saying, and I do agree. Especially since I mean, you know this about me. I have like tremendous respect for entrepreneurs. So, and I know what kind of uphill battle they have. So I agree with what you're saying. I think there needs to be more grace and stuff. But it's interesting. Her perspective, and then his perspective was that the toughest critic was the fellow African American. At least that's what they said.
It is.
And I found that to be, as a white guy, I found that to be interesting. I didn't know that, for example, and I thought that was just it was a fascinating conversation.
More harder, and they're more blatant too. So a white person, like for instance, I had a pretty difficult situation. Usually I do pretty well. I actually have all like 5-star reviews. If you look at, go to where I work at, or I'm saying, for example, you go to Thumbtack, it's just kind of like an Angie list. Pretty much I just got 1 2-star review from this lady down in Jacksonville. And it's because they hired me, they offer my reputation. They didn't know I was a black guy, and I do that on purpose. Okay. So, but when I showed up, of course they were taken. Like, you know what I mean? So, but they couldn't not take me because it's an emergency. So they needed the equipment. But when I showed up, the neighbors were scared as a mug. You sure you want to go with this guy? You know what I mean? You sure we can't wait? And I was like, look, this is an emergency situation. She need the equipment. So I had to fight from that point on for the job. Now, the lady, she was so struck by how hard I worked. I'm telling you, I'm saying she literally said this. And my best friend Chance, he was there, she said, this has got to be the hardest working man I've ever seen. She literally said that. That was the last thing she said, because I did everything they asked.
Why did she give you a 2-star then?
Well, see, that's the thing. Her friends were telling her husband was kind of like, she hired me the day I showed up, and this is why I believe it's God. I believe in divine providence. When I showed up, because I drove from Ohio to Jacksonville to go service her. So the day I showed up, her husband happened to have an issue where he had like high blood pressure, or whatever. His leg was swollen up, so he couldn't be there for the meeting or the signing of the contract. So it was just her. So like I said, they didn't know my face. All they knew was about my reviews on my site. They was on the phone. When they was talking to me on the phone, they was like, come on down, man. They didn't even ask about nothing. They was just ready, because my reviews are saying, look, if you read my reviews, the people were like, I can't say enough good things. I take care of my people. So So the point I'm trying to say
I
is,
believe you. I know you. I believe you.
I'm just it's right there on a third party site.
Well,
That's why I do
I
that
mean,
on
you don't have to
purpose.
convince me, man. I already know you.
But the point I'm trying to make is that eventually she ended up hiring a white guy, and this is how they did it. All right, so again, on Monday I showed up on Monday. Tuesday I did the prep work. Wednesday is the adjuster shows up. The adjuster, I mean, she was very nervous about cutting out the walls, and she had lilies. She had a lily farm all over her house, basically displays of lily everywhere. So she didn't want drywall all over the house. So we agreed that we were going to cut after the adjuster approved that she was covered for the cutting of the walls and taking the floors and everything out, and that she can get paid to put her stuff in storage. So I said, fine. So on Wednesday, I called her. She says the adjuster says we're approved and everything's good to go. Can we wait till she said a couple of days for the movers to move all my stuff out? So I said, fine, we can get started Friday. She says, okay. We hang up, everything cool. She calls me back. She says, can we push that to like Monday? Now keep in mind the equipment is cost per day. Every air mover is $25 a day. Every DU is $100 a day. So that's on them, and they know that. I told them that. That's all. No, they said, "Can we do it on Monday?" I said, "Fine." Then she said Tuesday. Okay. So what happened was we end up scheduling it on Tuesday. Now again, her friends were working her. I already know that. She had this lady that was riding me like she said, I was a contractor. I was a building inspector. She was riding me like crazy. But my business, emergency water restoration, is not a license or zone regulated industry, because we're not building anything. We're simply stopping damage and cleaning and putting in equipment. So she was trying to intimidate me, but I wouldn't. I already know I've been through this too much for you to intimidate me. You see what I'm saying? So eventually what happened was they teamed. I'm telling you, the day I showed up on what happened was Sunday night, she called me. She said one of the DHUs was shut off. So I told her what to do. And I said, I'll be there Monday morning, which is a day before our scheduled event. Remember, I said we were scheduled for Tuesday. She scheduled it for Tuesday. Prolonged it from Friday to Tuesday. So I showed up Monday morning, but I already knew, because I flew back to Ohio and did the invoice, because I already knew I was going to get a problem, because I already knew what they was doing. I could feel it. You can feel when people want to push you out. And I felt they was prolonging, so another person can come in, because she said she had a daughter who was in the industry, to one of her friends. So I showed up prepared. Bill to a crisp. It's so fair, you couldn't argue. Nobody can argue it. That's how I do you, because I already know what they're going to do, because it's big money. Remember, nobody wants to see a brother like me make anything over $3 or $4 grand. That bill was $7,000. Okay, so they owe me $7,000. I get out the van, they was like $7,000. Now, mind you, if it was ServPro, it would have been about 14 grand. Okay, so I'm telling you, my best friend who's in the same business, he was like, man, that's 10 grand minimum. I gave him a deal out of the world, but anyway.
Did they pay you? Have they paid you?
Oh yeah, they paid me on the spot. Well, pretty much they tried to pay me on the spot, but their cards were declined, so I had to work it out. But yeah, they paid me, but they it was a prosperous.
See, first of all, I mean, that's a fascinating story, and that's a heartbreaking story. But the only thing I don't agree with is, so I agree with first of all, that sucks, and I totally agree that people do. I think when you showed up and you were black, I can't deny that they all the things you say are true. I don't agree, however, that the world doesn't want a black man to make money and stuff like that. I think that's way too broad of a statement. I'm
telling you, bro,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there's unique hurdles, but
think about it. Think about every successful, almost every successful black man you know. At the end of the day, he's going to have a fall of some sort. At the end of the day, whether it's Bill Cosby, whether it's whoever it is, Tupac Shakur, whoever it is, I don't know. I don't care who it is. Barack Obama might make it out. I don't know. But what I'm saying, King didn't make it. if you're,
I don't know, Ron. That's just way too. I mean, don't put your head in that spot.
You give me an example. How many making out?
I don't
Jordan,
know, man. I mean, there's a lot of successful black men that I know.
Didn't make it out alive. You know what I'm saying?
See, I just think, first of all, I mean, just little old me in Pennsylvania, I know dozens and dozens of successful black men. Dozens and dozens. I mean, I don't know. You're talking about like massive fame, but I'm talking about like $250,000 a year, doing way better than me, really great life, really great professional life, succeeding, happy, thriving, respected. I just don't think that's true, man. I don't think that's that
way. I mean, people appear that I couldn't appear that way to a lot of people in some way. I ain't making nowhere closer to
well, I mean, they're not just appearing that way. They're I know them.
Externally, you wouldn't be able to see the things that we go through.
I'm not saying that they're not. See, that there's two different things. I'm not saying that they're not going through things, but I don't think it's true. I mean, I think they're going through things. I agree with you on that. But they're successful, and I don't think that people. I don't think that the majority of people are just looking for ways to like keep you from being successful. Like, I just don't think that's an epidemic like you think it is.
No. Well, all right. Even when I go to the bank, they don't like cashing big checks. I wouldn't have known this unless I'm actually cashing big checks. You see what I'm saying? But I even took my son to the bank. My son, he's 10 years old. He can tell you. The lady in the drive-thru made me get out of that is it's you don't do stuff like that. People, I've cashed many checks, but this lady over here at the Key Bank, we went through the drive-thru. All they usually do is ask for 2 forms of ID, put it in a little cup, put it in the thing. They run it. They put your name in the system, run your ID check.
I know you told me about this. This is not. I don't like hearing that, and that's wrong. And I mean that's
it's life, bro. It's not to excuse. I'm not saying it as an excuse or to say I should be given some type of credit for it. I'm just saying it's real out here, and this is what we're going through, and really, I don't think people can see it. I can't even in my business.
I think that's the difference. See, this is a nuanced conversation, because I think at the same time you can see it. Like I don't consider myself to be blind to what you're saying. Like, I mean, I don't relate to it like you do, but I'm saying, like, people like me, this is a misunderstanding. So this is a perfect opportunity to like clarify. So like a guy like me with my politics, I think the assumption is, right? The assumption is that I'm blind to it, or that I don't understand that there are hurdles to being an African American. Or, I mean, that's the assumption. When you talk to people, it's all like, you don't understand all these different things. I mean, that's not the case. I'm choosing. What I am doing is there's nuance in this. Like, what my fear is this puts a person's head in a place that I just think is so ultimately like destructive. You know what I mean? And it's like, I see it all the time. It's like I think it becomes an impediment to success. You know what I mean? It's like you're always thinking people are against you.
If you look at it, and for a lot of brothers it does. A lot of brothers it does, but not for me. For me, it's like, if you take we doing a high jump, and you take the pole and you put it on this guy, and you give him a 8-foot jump, right? And then when I get up to it and you make it 10 foot, well, I can complain about it and I can say, oh, I'm not gonna get over there. But if you telling me my goal is on the other side, like if I get over this 10 foot, I'm going to get to my goal.
I know, I understand that.
I'm not going to be like, oh, it was only 8 foot for him. It's only 8 foot. But I'll tell you once, when I get to my goal.
But I don't think. But I understand, and I agree with you.
When I finally get over that 10 foot, I'm going to say, hey, I had to jump 10 foot to get.
This is what I'm trying to say. Who is the? I need to understand, like, who specifically is the person that wants it to be 10 foot. Like, these things are too broad for, like, who is this person that wants? I'm saying is,
all right, okay. So
I mean, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like, I'm not trying to be condescending. I don't mean like, who's this individual person? I mean, like, who is this boogeyman that we're talking about? Like in other words, if there's something that we can correct, like, can we?
I'll give you another example. A real example. I have so many examples, but example at work. You know, I work part-time at the airport. They never see, nope, I'm a black swan. They never seen somebody come in and in 90 days go to Rio. Then in 120 go to Rome. And then and then 140 days go to Barcelona, then Portland. They don't know what to do, man. Right now, today we did a shift bid. They made every part-timer 5 days a week. Do you know that every single time I took a trip, they changed the schedule? Every single time. But guess what? Every single time, God has been on my side. It was a white person ahead of me every time, except for right now. I'm now the most senior guy, so I can't escape it now. But they make a special schedule for the person who is Caucasian. But what happened is, the last time what happened is Angela, which was actually a good friend of mine. We used to work a lot together. She would cover each other. She quit in the middle of the shift bid because she didn't want no part of that mess that they were doing up there. Because what they did was they made everybody under her work 5 days, and they gave her Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off because she's white. Unbelievable. So when she quit, that made me number one guy. Guess who got the schedule? I did. So what happens? So they had to give it to me. They didn't even tell me. They didn't even ask me. They just put my name on the schedule because she actually kind of mentioned it. But the point what I'm trying to make is, guess what happened today?
But who's they?
Today we had a new shift bid, and they're making me the most senior person. This is the first time since I've been there. I've been there the longest than anybody who's been there, which is almost a year. And as far as part-timers. And this is the first time that every single body's been on 5 days. And what the reason why is because they're trying to prevent us from traveling. And most people there can't travel because they're not making enough money where they can even afford a little $500 to go, because it only costs $100 to travel for flights, but they can't afford to feed themselves because they're on this slave labor, what they call employment. But the point is, the full-timers don't have the time and the part-timers don't have the money. So they think they playing me, but you know, God is no weapon formed against you. Come on, man.
But again, Ron, what I tell you, and the only reason I say this, man, is who's they? When you say this entity's against you, who is this?
They is typically,
like, I don't understand. You keep saying they.
I can't even say it's white people because it's black people too, like we were saying earlier.
But that's what I don't understand. Like, you always refer to this like this nameless, faceless entity that's trying to impose.
Not nameless, faceless. I'm telling you, it's everywhere we go. I gave you many examples.
Those examples you give me, I'm listening to those.
An example on business. When I show up to business, I have to.
I'm not denying any of that.
Hold on, Brock. Let me tell you. I have to reduce my price thousands of dollars. I won't get business if people see that I'm a black face. So I have to hide the fact that I'm a black business. I don't. If you look at my site, you see white people. You don't see black people. And I learned that from other successful black people. You see what I'm saying? Other successful black businessmen. You cannot expose yourself as a black person. And so what I'm saying to you is I'm cool with that. That's what we got to do to survive. It's what we got to do to survive. I'm just telling you what we got to do to survive.
I get that, but point me to something that, like, okay, so those things, all those anecdotes, all those things, those things you're telling me. Here, let me ask you a question real quick, Ron. Let me say something here. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. And this is in the conversations about race in our country. This is always something that frustrates me. When we address a problem, which all those things you said, I don't personally like Brock Lawley. He does not know a single person in my life, not a single person. I know there are people that exist, but I don't know of a single person that would not hear those stories and say, number one, that's morally wrong. Number two, I don't want to live in that world. And number three, I want to pursue justice. I want to make that better. I'm just telling you the truth. I don't know a single person that wouldn't say that. Now, that being said, what are these solutions, and what are these things that like, okay, so you can't do that legally. You're not allowed to legally do the things that people are doing to you. So I know that there's justice for you on the book or whatever. So it's not as though you and I can vote for anything or my point is, you're describing to me you're describing personal prejudice, you're describing individual bigotry, and you're describing judgment on the basis of somebody's skin, right?
Yeah.
Well, to my knowledge, those have been sins of humanity for as long as, well, certainly as for as long as I've been alive. And so what I'm pointing to is, what about our society what solutions can be pursued to make any of those things that you're dealing with be any better? Because if you can tell me what those things are, then people can get around these things and bring about a better world. But what I run into way too often are these like broad sweeping statements about things that really,
It's not broad. I gave
you know what I mean though? Like you can't, like, it leaves you with a sense of frustration, because my point is that's why everybody's so divided, because you think to yourself,
why is you're saying you want me to identify the enemy. And what I'm saying is the enemy is a systematic, it's an indoctrination. People, if you're indoctrinated,
what about the system? I'm interested in that. Like, what about the system?
Religion indoctrine people to believe in whether they're, in superiority versus servitude. You see what I'm saying?
So the enemy is religion in this particular case.
No, the indoctrine is ingrained in religion. Yeah, religion. This is the doctrine that people are perceive reality from being indoctrined. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, when someone sees me, they're seeing something that they've been conditioned. You remember? Well, I remember I said that they hired me because of my reputation. If they didn't see those reviews, they seen a picture of me, they would have never called. She pretty much said that herself. It was the reputation. But when they seen me, from that moment forward, they're trying to get out the system, because it's got to be a scam. He's got to be a scammer. The only reason why they didn't think that I was a scammer is because the white guy that they hired said, he looked at my invoice and he said, "Oh, wow, this guy is being generous." You know why he said that I was being generous? It's because my prices were better than his. So he had to admit. He had to say, "I can't beat these prices." He even said to him, he said, for $900, he'll complete this whole job. And I can't do that for that price. And guess what?
I know. And Ron, that's just flat out wrong. I mean, what do you want me to say? That's flat out wrong. And I'll tell you what, when a black man comes to my door for a job, I can look you dead in the eyes and tell you that I'm not trying to get out of the job. I mean, I've had that happen to me. I just hired a guy to come in and spray my house for bugs. I never saw this dude's face. He's a private contractor. I didn't think that stuff for 1 second, and he did an awesome job.
Another thing too is that if they know that I'm an employee, they don't mind. If they know that I'm the owner,
yeah, but this dude owned his business. What I'm telling you is, what is the chance? Maybe she's just a horrible racist. I mean, that's possible.
No, I actually don't think the lady, I mean, she probably was, she had the, maybe some seasoner, but
sounds like racism to me.
It wasn't really, it was her husband, it was their influences. I even told her that, because she paid me and everything. You see what I'm saying? She could have been.
Yeah, but if what you're telling me is true, Ron, that's literally the definition of racism. If what you're telling me is true, you show up with a black face and all of a sudden she's trying to get out of the deal. And I mean, what else is that? That's just flat out right down the middle of the plate racism, isn't it?
Well, black people do it the same thing. I'm going to tell you, I had a pastor.
Well, that's racism too.
Black pastor, don't matter. This brother, man, I gave this dude, he got a quote before I got in there. They told this man like 14 grand just to get down there and to get it clean. Man, if you would have seen this basement, you wouldn't even believe it, brother. They wouldn't even go down there. They had about 3 inches thick of soot down there. I had to go down there. I cleaned. It's the most horrific environment I've ever went down and cleaned. Now, I charged this man $3,500 to do the job. $3,500. It's about as cheap as you can get, bro. I'm trying to tell you. It was at least,
I believe you.
At least 15 grand.
That sounds horrific.
You know what I mean? And do you know this man gave me a problem? Like it took him 6 months to pay me. And then even when I did pay him, I had to get in the car, ride to him with the bank, deal with declining cards. You know what I mean? You wouldn't imagine what I had to do. And then at the end of the day, he still tried to weasel out the bill, tried to weasel, trying to make it seem like I was overcharging him and stuff because it's $3,000. But the $3,000 was like, now keep in mind, I robbed myself of between $3,000 to $6,000 off that one job. Do you know how long I can feed my family on $6,000?
Maybe it's from these stories, Ron. As a side note, it sounds like you're underpricing your services. I don't know anything about your businesses.
I am. I will admit.
From these stories, it sounds like you need to jack up the prices.
Well, if I jack up the prices, then I won't get nothing.
Is that right?
Why would I reduce my prices if I didn't have to?
Well, maybe what I'm saying to you is maybe you got yourself on tilt. You're thinking everybody's against you when then maybe you just got a couple freaking idiots that are either racist.
Look at my reviews, buddy.
I believe you. I know who you are. I already know you're hardworking.
They write specifically what I do. I'm going to do fair. That's just who I am. I walk into your house.
I believe you, Ron. I have no trouble believing that.
I know what the industry I can get. My friend, I know what my friend gonna charge you. I look in there and my friend gonna hit you in the head for about 10 grand in this job. But I will do it for you I'll do it for you for 5 because I know that it can be done for 5. And it's a deal for you because you can actually now, it's not going to be as devastating for you. But if you just be willing to pay me my 5, right, without any problems, we got a win-win. Yeah, I'll save you 3 to 5 grand. Give me my money without no problem. You see what I'm saying?
Hey, you know what? I got a different theory for you because I suffer from the same thing myself. Why don't you entertain this for a second? So all my life, on some level or another, I have suffered from what I consider to be being too nice of a guy. And there's a whole lot of reasons for this that I can't get into, but I mean, I put it together eventually. I got a smoking hot wife, but right from when I was a dating man to like the whole 9, like professionally, I'm never the guy that like sees the angle, takes down the angle. I have a lot of restrictions on me morally that other people don't have. So that's some of it. And then I just have a personal kind of, philosophy that, and all these things, business is dog eat dog. It's cutthroat, all that stuff. I don't need to tell you that. So, there's a chance, I've noticed this. Some of these guys that come in and they charge like reasonable prices and they do good work. There's something about the human psychology. I'll give you an analogy. When you were dating a girl and like when you were 18, 19, if you treat her too nice, the irony is that turns around, bites you in the butt. She wants like a little edge. I bet you that the guy that comes in and overcharges, he actually charges 14, knowing he's probably going to get 10, but he wanted 10 the whole time, all that kind of sharky stuff. Like my guess is you're dealing with some of that even more than you're dealing with the racist stuff.
Oh yeah,
you probably are under. You're probably
it's both, but
you're a pretty nice guy. That's probably your worst problem.
Like that's my scenario is I don't face racism everywhere I go, and that's not all my customers. I'm just saying
and I'm not saying there isn't racism. I want you to hear me say that. I'm not trying to say there's no racism. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I'm just giving you I'm just saying that if I do chop off 3 grand, and another reason why I have to do this to be I have to probably disclose is that I compete for my business in an industry that typically people don't have to compete for business.
Right.
So usually you just get your emergency call and you go and you respond. Whereas
that's because you're a private contractor, right? That's the reason. Right.
Well, it's just because I was starting out. I'm the guy in the video, and I'm telling you, I'm just starting out. And so in my industry, I'm the guy that showed up. Not anymore, but when I first started, I showed up with the little green machine extractor. You know what I mean? And you like, well, see, now that's why I don't mess with black people, because they come in here with little makeshift equipment. But I knew the equipment did exactly what every other professional equipment did, and I had to use that to get started. And then now of course, I've upgraded since. But what I'm saying is that if you don't have, I started out pretty much nothing.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're trying to say.
It's like playing Monopoly. Yeah. And everybody else get $1,500 to start, but you didn't get any to start with. So you got to run around the board about 3 or 4 times. So
That's
you can
right.
buy
That's right. But you know what, man? It might make you hungry. You know, I think at the end it might help you because those other guys might get fat, lazy, and complacent. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That's what I love. That's what I love about the free market. You know, that made me fall in love with the free market because, you know, these guys have advantages. Like you look at these corporations, they get in bed with those politicians. They write all these laws to keep the little guy from getting up. But the thing that always catches them is they get fat and they get complacent and they get lazy, and these guys under them are hungry and they find angles. And I like that about the free market. I like that. The only thing I don't like about the free market is now all these corrupt people are always, you have to keep the free market free, but these guys, they pick winners and losers, and then it all falls apart. But if you keep it like a jungle like that, eventually those guys are going to slip. You know what I mean? And like look at these companies like Uber and stuff. They found ways in because these guys started slipping.
Yeah, I'm in a battle with that. Like my friend, he's in the business too, and he's one of those guys who can show up in a dress suit and dress pants. It give you a high, and he get big accounts. But what he does is he spends a lot too. So he's got 10 laborers, and he's dishing out all this cash. And so one of the things that I learned is that, we both went to Jacksonville. And this is the philosophy that I came up, my business philosophy is it doesn't matter if you got one man who's a businessman, he spends $50,000. Oh no, let's say be more reasonable. He spends $30,000. But he spends $20,000, he makes $30,000.
Yeah.
He made a lot of money, right? He went out there, he made $30,000, big numbers. He had a lot of operations, he had a lot of people running. But here go me. I go run down there. I do 2 gigs, small gigs myself, do it on an efficient battle, work with 2 people, and I make 10 grand.
That's the same thing he made. Yeah.
I invested 5 grand, made 10 grand. You invested 20 grand, made 30 grand. Yeah, you did a lot of work there. You had a beautiful looking operation, but really was it profitable?
Yeah, you're right. But I think he gets you in the long run. I think he gets you in the because you know why I think he gets you in the
a month in advertisement. I spend 500 and I spend 500. I'm not going to tell you the whole secret, but it's in action now. So he calls me today. He says, "I see you at the top of Google on water damage. What's going on? How that happened?" Meanwhile, he's spending thousands and thousands of dollars a month for some SEO company. They hitting them in the head, man. I'm telling you, man, he got $3 grand a month. I'm saying, bro, I will learn how to do that on my own. Right.
And that's because necessity is the mother of invention. You are exactly right about that, man. But you know what? I still think he gets you in the long run, and here's why. Because everything I've learned, and I'm not a very good entrepreneur, that's probably why I respect these guys so much, but everything I've watched these guys do is these guys that are really successful, kind of change your life, man, like break like $250,000 type a year type jobs. They always get people spin, so they get money spinning that they're not doing. You know what I mean? So in this particular cat's case, he made 10 and you made 10. But that dude, pretty much all his little minions are out there doing everything. So he made 10 and the minions are making 10. But the whole time he's freed up to turn around and set himself up to make another 10 somewhere else.
You're absolutely right. And he'd be using my ideas to do it. But yeah, you're right. You absolutely right.
So all you need to do is you need to get a couple minions. You got to get a couple minions.
You said it yourself. They get fat. See, that's the thing.
They do.
See,
they do.
He's making a lot of money. But because he's got an operation, it's like Audis. I was just reading about Audis, right? How Audis they're skimping on, it's really skimpy on their employees, and that's how they get have the prices so low. You walk in there, they run a whole store with 4 people,
right?
And so the point is they cut corners in little different things to be efficient.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now you're right. So the thing would be is if I took my strategy alone and continue to compete with him in his strategy, then you're right. I probably would lose because you can't.
Well, just in the long run, not up front.
Yeah, in the long run, I would lose because you're right. I agree
because
that on that.
he'll build an
But
empire.
I'm not going to, of course, just stay stagnant. You got to evolve, right? You got to evolve too. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what I'm doing is I actually talked to this young man at my man Jacob. It's funny, his name Jacob, and this brother is prosperous too. He's a young white guy, but that, not to say that matters, but this guy is one of those guys I would say is a genuine, just man, he's just a real good guy. He came in. He wanted to be the crew chief, and I say within 90 days, he was crew chief. He wanted to be supervisor. He was acting supervisor. He's really a good, genuine guy, man. And I said to him the other day, I said, man, you want to learn the flood business? He was like, yeah, man. He said, that sounds good, And so I was like, man, so what I'm doing is I'm setting up basically a mentor apprentice. So I'll teach you the business. I don't mind teaching the business. It'll take you about 2 years to learn it. And it's not rocket science. You buy the van, buy equipment, and if he's equipped, now I have a partner in business that can respond, and all I have to do is focus on getting the leads.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Hey, I met this guy, Ron, one time. Just if this is appealing to you, I met this guy one time, and man, he saw an innovative idea. So he was a contractor, so he's a little different than you, but his thing was drywall and all this different stuff, hard work, stuff that just like you're doing, like the stuff that most people don't want to do. And there's money in that. That's the way America works. There's money in, if you look through the history of America, it's always dudes, if they're willing to meet that need where other people are too lazy, a lot of it's just work ethic. Like what you're doing is just like work ethic stuff. But here's the interesting thing. This guy told me this, and even though I'm a conservative and you're not as conservative as me, the one thing you and I agree on is the criminal justice system and the prisons and the fact that this is all nonsense and the war on drugs. I'm not very conservative with that stuff. But my point here is this guy realized that there's all these cons, right? And they're having a hard time breaking into the workforce, but he trusted his own God-given instincts and ability to sit in front of a man and make an assessment of what this person actually is, not just look at like a scorecard and be like, well, you did time in the penitentiary, which is what the corporation would do, right? They got a little formula, and if you don't check all the boxes, you're out. But that's not the whole assessment of a man. Well, anyway, this guy, he realizes labor in his business is huge because he's got all this turnover, and he was hiring these guys that kind of were raised like me. And most of the guys that were raised like me are like, they think they're too good to do this or that. So they would come in for like 2-3 weeks. He'd train them and then they'd be gone. And he was just tired of that. So he gets this connection at a penitentiary, and he finds out, when these guys are released, and he says, I want to be the first phone call. I want to take this guy out to lunch and I want to meet this guy. He starts crushing it because, first of all, these guys that he's hiring, I mean, he's not hiring every one of those guys. He's making an assessment of who the man is in front of him. But this person's hungry. Now, it's a little exploitative, maybe depending on how you look at it, but I didn't look at it that way.
They don't have no options, so they're more likely to be more loyal.
But they wanted to keep it on the up and up. They were more loyal. They appreciated that he treated them with respect. So, you could make a case that he's being exploitive because these guys, but at the same time, you could flip that whole perspective around and be like, he's giving these guys an opportunity. So it's all how you look at it. My point is that the work ethic thing got solved. The loyalty thing got solved. And plus these guys turn around and they these guys, they were able to get married, have kids, have a stable life. I thought it was a beautiful thing.
All men want to do is that, man.
That's right. I totally agree. It doesn't matter. All men from all backgrounds. That's what they want.
Yeah, man. All people want is to live a good, fulfilling life.
That's right. That's right.
It.
I'll tell you what, on a business level, that was a stroke of genius. And I respect stuff like that. Because he was scooping up work ethic that these other businesses were tossing aside.
The guys that's in prison are not animals, man. They're just people who, were born in a hard situation, man.
I think some of them probably are animals, but not all of them.
If you're born without a father, you're at a disadvantage. Right. And I would admit, and I didn't say that I had the best father on the planet. I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but I know he did his best. But his presence alone,
I know,
just the presence makes a difference.
I relate.
So if the brothers, like I have a lot of friends right now They don't know how to function in a relationship.
Right.
They think that the woman being a woman is like, oh hell no, she lying to me.
I know.
She lying. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, what do you think she's a woman? What do you think she's gonna do, man? She's going to trick you into going to the birthday party with her, man. That's what she's gonna do. But you see what I'm saying is that, you know what I mean, they don't know how women function,
man,
because
that's
they didn't
so
grow up.
true. That's so true, man.
What I'm saying.
So that's the
I be
thing.
looking at him like, boy, that ain't nothing. That
I
you
know.
what?
You're so right.
You still mad? I told. No,
No, I'm saying, man, you are so right about this. This is like big time a problem. And this transcends culture, this transcends race, you know, like all the kids I grew up with, every single one of them, good friends of mine, didn't have a dad. They're all struggling with that. They're not struggling with everything. I mean, it's not like every aspect of their life is a mess, but the relational stuff, like how to be faithful to a woman, how to have a marriage, how to raise kids, they're a disaster because they don't have any like key. They don't have any way of like gauging that.
They don't have to get. I mean, if I didn't see my parents and what they went through,
Me too.
I would think about like this is not meant for me.
Hey, I got this buddy though. While we're talking about entrepreneurships, I think you'll think this is interesting. I got this buddy and didn't have a dad, good friend of mine, and always been a successful entrepreneur, always doing just everything he touches is just successful. And he's always taking these risks that I would be too afraid to take. And he's just a great entrepreneur. And being around this guy, I developed this theory, and I wonder what you think about it. So this is not a universal statement, but these guys that don't have dads, especially these guys that I know that don't have dads, you know what I think makes them good entrepreneurs is guys like me. My whole life, I get to walk like the trapeze rope with a net under me. So my parents and my father and stuff, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, if this doesn't work out, if stuff goes south, I'm always going to, worst comes the worst, I'm going to have this like fail safe or whatever. But my friend, these guys, they don't have that. They never had that their whole life. Right from the jump, they had to be in the game. They had to be sharp. They had to be looking for like angles, and it made them strong in this way. It made them savvy. So in a way, like, but the relational stuff, he's not doing good with that. So it's like some of that stuff has been a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, I have a half sister that we were just talking about that. She didn't grow up with my parents, you know, my dad, because my dad was with my mother. And she ended up turning out to be a very successful businesswoman. Man, she started her own collection company. And I was telling her, I was like, look, sister, you know, all through my life, you know what I'm saying, I've admired her. She's actually a year younger than me. And but she was saying, I don't know if it's all about, you know, the money, the success.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
She just can't, you know, you can just tell she's lonely. And she has a good man, but she don't stay.
Mentally, it's not there, right? It's not right.
Yeah. Well, in the see, that's another thing too in our culture is what is being portrayed as what a man's supposed to be ain't a real man. See what I'm saying? It's a false image of what a man is. So what women think that a man should be, they disappointed. So my man, they think this man is supposed to be able to fix everything in the house, right? You see this, he's supposed to be able to fix that, but he don't know. Like, yeah, your brother may be able to fix it because his dad taught him how to do that.
Right.
But my man Chance, he ain't the type of guy. He don't even know how to paint. To do that, I mean, he's the type
unfortunately,
of guy
that's the kind of guy I am. Unfortunately,
yeah, he would hire somebody to do it.
Yeah,
and that doesn't make him less of a man. You know what I mean? But in her mind, oh, he don't know how to fix the garage. He's not a man. That's what a man's supposed to.
So if she's saying that to him, that's bad.
Yeah,
right?
And then not only saying it, what I mean is she believes that, and then he's not adequate, he's not doing it, that means she's not turned on. So that means she's not probably giving them the love. So
that's
love,
right. And it just dominoes. It just dominoes. Yeah, man, that's smart.
Yeah,
he's
waking up angry. Bitch, don't talk to me. You know what I'm saying? Yep. You know what I mean? Because he didn't get none last night.
And before you know it, poisons the whole well. Boy, that's spot on, man. That's spot on. Hey, listen, interesting to ask you this question, to spin this into this. So, in my opinion, there's a lot of problems that society's facing, but this one we're talking about right here is the most understated one this thing we're talking about, where we got a crisis in masculinity. We got a crisis in how men are being portrayed. We got a crisis in how society's viewing men. speaking about men, the assumptions about men. I agree with all that. I see the consequences of that in my life constantly. I mean, I make my life at a church, so like the majority of my job is ministering to people that walk through the door. Like a lot of my week is people walking through the door with broken lives. And man, if I could connect the most common problem that comes through that door is that number one, a man is either not doing what he needs to be doing in this situation, or he is doing what he's supposed to be doing and he's completely and utterly taken advantage of, or society has absolutely no like grace or forgiveness or anything for a man. It's like it's basically like a man is just like a predator.
Because we're not being taught the right way. See, if you taught the word the right way, so for an example, in the parable with the man with the 3 talents, right? You know, the 5 talents, the 2 talents, and the 1 talent. The moral of that story is you better be profitable. So in the kingdom, be profitable. The guy that had 5 talents doubled his money. He said, enter the joy of the Lord. The guy that had 2 talents, he doubled his profit. He said, enter the joy of the Lord. The guy who had 1 talent, he saved his talent. He said, here, I known you to be a brutal, a cruel and brutal, take what you don't sow. You know what I mean? And so he gave him back his 1 talent. This is what's yours. But he says, you evil and lazy servant. And he said, cast the unprofitable service into utter darkness. So, and there will be reaping and gnashing of teeth. So what he's trying to say is, in the kingdom, be profitable.
Yeah, but but see the difference, the nuance there is what kind of profit is he talking about? He's not talking about coin. I think he's talking about the kingdom of God.
I am the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom to come, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, the kingdom we're living in now. What do you think? God gave you life, so you're living in the manifestation.
Yes, but we're not. Yes, but we're not living in the consummate kingdom.
Well, that's relative, but I'm gonna prove the point. I'm gonna prove the point. I'm gonna prove the point in this way. Look, Jason, the last story of Genesis it tells you all about this. It's the story of Joseph. Joseph went into Egypt. He was sold into Egypt through slavery, which tells you in Genesis they're talking about slavery. Keep that in mind. Now, he went in there. He interpreted the king's dream, the Pharaoh's dream. Now, keep in mind the Pharaoh represents the government when you read the story. Now, he said there's going to be 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of famine. He taxed them during the prosperous years. He taxed the grain. During the famine, he sold the grain that he taxed the people of back to him. He bankrupted their money, so they had no money. So they went back to him and said, we don't have any money. The money has failed us. What do we do now? So he said, we traded bread, exchanged bread for what? For their livestock. After they came back the year later, he's changed they said, we don't have money, we don't have livestock. He says, all we have is our land and ourselves. So Jacob said, okay. He traded their bread for their land. Now, why would you trade your land for bread? Why would you trade your cow for bread? But it's a metaphor. It says right afterwards.
You don't believe that, by the way, you don't believe that happened?
Well, it's a metaphor.
No. You don't. What I'm saying to you is you don't believe that literally happened.
That a man named Joseph.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You don't believe that. I'm just trying to be clear. You don't believe that, right?
No. I don't believe.
Okay. I disagree, but that's neither here nor there. Finish your story.
This is what I would say. I would be open to debate that. You know, because I would say if you can provide me evidence, I would believe you.
Well, I can't provide you evidence.
All right. So then I would say I can only say I believe in that. I can't say I know that to be true. I can only tell my son that I believe that's to be truth, not to know that.
I agree. It is a step. It's a leap of faith. But I just didn't know where you stood on that. I mean, I can't. Yeah, I'm not claiming to be able to prove that to you.
The story is telling us that Joseph was the son of Jacob. So Joseph, the offspring of Jacob, is now basically the governor of Egypt. It literally says he's the governor. They called him Lord. The Egyptians called him Lord at this point because he changed them from owning their livestock, having money, and owning themselves, being free, to now being servants of the Pharaoh. And they moved into the cities and they started working for wages. Basically, they're telling you basically how they civilized the Egyptians, and they bankrupted. He became the central banking for Egypt. You see what I'm saying? So all of those messages is in that story if you're really paying attention.
Oh, I agree, but I don't think that's the walkaway message isn't to profit on this earth. Although I don't think there's anything wrong with profiting on this earth.
This country, the kingdom in which we're living in, is 100% about profiting. It's about capitalism.
Well, that's right.
And so if you capitalize in this country, you can enter the joys.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Please do not misunderstand what I am saying. I am Rondale, I am a hardcore capitalist. I am in no way, shape, or form sticking my nose up I'm saying I'm strictly talking about the context of the Word of God here. I do not believe.
The Word of God is so that you can use here on earth. The Word of God is not for here so you can use it for some other time.
No, we don't. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I totally agree with you. In fact, I think the kingdom of God is being built right now as we speak. I don't believe that we've reached the consummate kingdom.
In the words of Christ, it says, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven."
I totally agree. I don't disagree.
That's the mission statement. The mission statement is the Bible is written by Masons.
Yes,
you know that,
yes,
right?
but Rondale, the difference here, the difference in perspective on us, and maybe we don't have a difference. I'm trying to figure that out. So you watch the life of Christ, right? So the centerpiece of the gospel is the life of Christ. And so when you study this man, what you see is he's not navigating this world like a normal man would navigate it, where his head is turning and swiveling on all the things that a man would see. He's teaching a new way to be human. He's teaching a man to see beyond what simply his eyes see here now. And he's trying to show you a new way to see eternal life, full life. But that's not storing up grain here on earth. That's an eternal view of things.
He said it's within hand. He said it's within reach. He's telling you that if you receive the word and live by it, you will enter the joys of the Lord. Like on this planet, like I said.
Yes, on this planet, not this lifetime, not the way not the way we live right now.
Well, I know that after we die, the body.
Well, we never die. We never die. We never die. I don't believe you die.
What I say, I put it like, it depends on the person. See what I'm saying?
Depends on the person. Right. Depends on the person.
Everybody doesn't live forever. It depends on what you're doing during your life. See, you got a soul during your life. You got to create. You have to give during your life in order to have anything remaining after life. But like I said,
this is. So I love talking about this because it's so interesting how and I never try to convince you. Live a God-fearing life. I wouldn't change anything about it. So the person of Christ in your mind, is that also analogy to you? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to fight. I'm just saying, is that a person for real, or is that another like grander analogy?
For me, it's absolutely without a doubt an allegory.
There wasn't a Messiah that physically came, physically died, to bring about the fruition of God's rescue plan for a fallen world. That's not what you believe, right?
No. That couldn't even.
Now, just out of curiosity, was that an evolution in your thinking, or were you raised to believe that way? I'm just curious.
My dad didn't believe that. My dad disagrees with me. My father disagrees with me.
Oh, okay. So now that's very interesting. So is that the center of the doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist, or is that his own mindset, his own study, his own personal theology, or is that like the core of the Seventh-day Adventist theology in your? Because I'm a little weak on understanding.
We didn't consider ourselves Seventh-day Adventists. We were just non-denominational Christians who worship on the Sabbath. But
But
We
wasn't
were
that the undergirding? Wasn't the? Didn't you tell me that once? Maybe I'm wrong. I thought I
I mean,
remembered
most
that.
people compared us to, yeah, they either the Jehovah Witnesses or because we worship on the Sabbath. That's it, on a Saturday.
But that was the only thing you had in common with the Seventh Day Adventist. Nothing
Yeah,
else, right?
that's really that all that I've known. But now that I've been like, I debate with not debate, but you know what I'm saying. I invite them over. You know what I'm saying. If they come and knock on my door, I'm going to go out there and
Oh,
have a
but
conversation.
see, I don't think the Seventh Day Adventists are the same as the Jehovah Witnesses. I think there's a difference between them. Is that not true?
There is a difference. Yeah, I know a lady who is a 7-day Adventist. There is a difference, and they are.
There's some theological differences between those two thinkings, and I gotta admit, I'm weak on the. I have to do some more. I have a pretty good full understanding of what the Jehovah Witnesses believe, but I actually can't speak that intelligently about what the Seventh Day Adventists believe, which is why I'm asking you this. Like I thought
Yeah,
you were
I
a
wasn't
Seventh
a
Day
7-day
Adventist.
Adventist. I didn't go to a 7-day Adventist. I just know that they worship on the Sabbath. They keep the Sabbath day.
There's
That's it.
some other things too. There's some interesting theology they have about the
They
person
don't
of
eat pork. I
Christ.
think. Yeah, they don't eat pork. We didn't eat pork either. So it's just
But
I
that's
think that
interesting. So what is the person of
oh,
Christ in your theology? Like, what role does that play? I'm curious by that.
well, and my father, he believes just like probably like you know, that he came to be the Lord and Savior. From my perspective, for an example, I do research. Like I'll look up, like when I researched the story of Christ, for example, and they said that Christ, when he was a baby, the three kings, right, they came to his house or whatever, and they said,
His
take
house.
him to Egypt. You know what I mean? All right, so his dad, who's Joseph. Now, there's a lot of different things. Like, for an example, Matthew starts with the lineage of Joseph. You okay?
Yep.
So why would they start with the lineage of Joseph if Joseph was the stepfather? Jesus can't be traced back through Joseph if that's not the seed of Joseph. But beyond that, they took Jesus into Egypt. So when they took him into Egypt when he was a baby, it says he went back to Jerusalem when King Herod died. So I looked up. I just Googled. You can do it right now. I Googled. When did King Herod die? Because I wanted to know what age was he when he went back. Well, it turns out that it's documented factually that King Herod died 4 BC. Okay, so if you tell me that King Herod died 4 BC, that's 5 years before Christ. So you mean to tell me he couldn't even be there to give the order to slaughter all the children under 2? You know what I'm saying? He couldn't. He wasn't even there. He wasn't even alive. So what I'm saying is I can't pass on to the next generation belief as facts. I don't need to believe it's a fact in order to get the moral of the story, though. So Christ was a rabbi.
So what role? So with all that being said, because I obviously don't agree, but with all that being said, what role does it then play in your life?
Because Jesus hit the words. It's the words, and the words are lessons of truth.
So it's more like
when the Pharisees and the Sadducees went to in Luke 17:21, for an example, he said, "Where is this kingdom? Where is this kingdom of heaven? Where should we go?" He says, "The kingdom of heaven comes not with observation." He says they won't say, "Lo, there we go," or "Come with me here." But he says the kingdom of heaven is within. He dropping jewels on them. Who are the Pharisees and the Sadducees? They were the religious clerics at the time, and they were questioning Christ, who was a rabbi, because they said, "Rabbi, rabbi, rabbi." So he went from synagogue to synagogue, dropping knowledge that he obviously learned from where? Egypt. Because the Bible started out, it says, "Out of Egypt I must call for my son." It is written. They already knew the prophecy. They were acting out the prophecy. The Bible writers are genius, man. They just contrived the story. Before Jesus, if you take out the J, you get Zeus. Put a Z in there. You got Zeus. Before Zeus, you got Horus. So every hour of the day, we say Horus still to this day. Horus. We still say Amun. After every prayer, we say Amun, Amen, Amun. Who Amun Ra. We still, you see, all the original, the foundations, like in the Bible where it says Matthew 22, he says, this kingdom that's prepared for you, the people on the right wing, see what I'm saying, the far right. when he was talking about dividing the sheep and the goats on the right and the left. And you see him saying he put the sheep on the right and he blessed the sheep that were on the right, and then he put the left on the left, the leftists. He cursed the leftists, right? The leftists were the goats. What are goats? Goats are all colors, right? Goats are silver, brown, black, white. You know what I'm saying? But sheep are what? Sheep are primarily white, and every now and then you get a black sheep. You get a Dr. Ben Carson, right? You get a Dr. Ben Carson, or you get you a sheriff, whatever, that Sheriff Clark or whatever his name is. But what I'm saying is
that's some real, from my perspective, Ron, that's so like, I think that'd be the equivalent of, in my opinion, what you're saying to me. Let's say I got real into like my white heritage, which, full candor, I never have. But let's say I did. And then let's say I was seduced into thinking that there was these, like, my fear for you here, and you and I, we disagree. It doesn't even bother me that we disagree. It doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, I think what you're doing is you're laying over I think you're taking the gospel and you're laying it over your personal identity that you've carved out for yourself. That's what I hear. That's my personal opinion. And you're not the first person to do that. And to some extent, I suppose we all do that.
Am I not saying what I'm saying is reality?
You know what I mean, though? I mean, like, that sounds to me like somebody's. See, that's not how I look at the gospel. I just don't look at it as this thing that I like crowbar into my life. I look at it as a thing that is supposed to actually envelop my life, and like, I'm supposed to submit to it. It's not supposed to submit to me.
Let me do this one experiment, okay? I'm going to Genesis 3, right? This is after Adam consumed the fruit, right? This is what the Lord God said. Look, it says, also for Adam and his wife, the Lord God made tunics of skin. This means the God was a hunter, and God took a deer or something and made a tunic of skin, okay, and clothed them. Then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, capital U, keep that in mind, capital. What do you mean God says he's become one of us? To know good and evil, and now least he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So it's even admitting that the fruit of the tree of knowledge leads to the tree of life, and to take part of the tree of life is to live in forever. Now, keep in mind, the end of the chapter says, so he drove out the man and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword means who was using swords? Africans were using spears. The Aztec was using spears. We know who swords is, but I put a flaming sword which turns every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Why would the God of creation, who showed the gazelle that if you go into the water hole, you could have an alligator chop you off. If you go in the bush, there could be a lion. So gazelles know to be quick and nimble. Okay, so to apply the knowledge to survive. Why would a God that created me deny me knowledge and access to the tree of life? Do you know what the tree of life is? The tree of life was like that, like I told you earlier, where Jacob buried the foreign gods under the terebinth tree. Remember I said whenever you become an American, you have to lose yourself, your foreign gods. And they call that purifying. So what that means, that they assumed that the gods and everything that you were doing before was impure. You see what I'm saying? So the point I'm trying to make is that even in the story of the Tower of Babylon, this will really crack you up. That's Black Wall Street, right? Tower of Babylon. We was told that they were disobedient. They had disobeyed God's law. God told them to stop building. But guess what? It not in the word. Never said that one time. Never got warned. This was a conspiracy. They went down and seen the people have finally learned one speech. They learned that the people will finally learn how to work with brick and mortar. Now, brick and mortar we know is masonry. Masonry is unique. That's how the Masons put their identity in there. Because see, Africans never built with mortar. If you look at the ancient stones, there's no mortar inside the pyramids, so that's not African. So we know that when you say brick and mortar, we're talking about masons, because that's what it's called, masonry. So they learned how to build with brick and mortar. They learned one speech. They said, let us build ourselves a city. And this is the last major point. They said, least we be scattered over the face of the earth. That's a diaspora. So they were building them a tower because they were scared that they would be scattered. And guess what happened? When they went down there to see that they were actually did it, it says, let us go down there. Let who? The same us that we was just talking about. Let us go down there and confuse them. And when they went down there, they scattered them. And that's the reason why they weren't able to build. So what I'm saying to you is, yeah, the truth is in here, but it's how you read it. And
okay, let me present a different perspective.
Okay.
The story of Genesis that you just described. So you have
Genesis 11.
I'm talking about you have Adam and Eve created by God, and he goes through the process. We all know it as children. Light contrasts dark, land contrasts water. He spills the stars like dice into the sky, so on and so forth. Finally creates all the creatures we know, and then mankind, the crown jewel of creation. He says this is good, and I take him on his word. He's God. So he says this is good. This is what he intended to do. And he places a tree in the center of a garden, good and evil. He says you cannot eat of this tree. Now, the assumption that you're making is that there is nefarious intentions here. Like that's the premise of everything that you just said, that this somehow is like a power play between God and man in some way, which, by the way, if one were to see it that way, I could understand that perspective. That's not how I see it, but this is just a counter perspective. Perhaps and this is what I happen to believe. The restriction on knowledge of good and evil could just simply be that God is knowledgeable of things. Like, for example, I'm knowledgeable of things that Grant, my son, my young 2-year-old son, is not knowledgeable of. So technically you could spin that and make me out to be some sort of narcissistic, evil guy when I say no to him, don't do this, do that. But you could also make me out to be a kind, loving guy if you change the perspective. Hear me out. Yes. You could.
You just hit it on. I'm telling you, hit it on the nail, brother.
No, I'm saying. So my point here is I don't see that right there. So when in other words, when Adam and Eve betray God and don't listen, which I think is what it says it is. I don't think it's some conspiratorial thing. I think it's flat out sin.
They didn't betray him because God said God said was.
No, they betrayed themselves. They betrayed their sin. They betrayed that relationship with him. Well, Lisa, like I know that you don't agree, but let me just finish this. Let me just finish this because this is a different perspective.
Hold on. Let me respond to what you said real quick, because you said, I think you hit it on the nail, because you said my son. See, and that's what the story is about. Okay, so like my daughter, I don't talk to my daughters about sexual relations. And in the Jehovah's Witness version of the Bible, knowledge is actually says sexual relations. It doesn't say to know. You know what I mean? So that's how I knew I was right for 100%. But because to know in the King James, when they use Adam knew his wife, they're saying to knew is to have the knowledge in past tense, right? So it's telling you that he's applying the knowledge. And also, he's telling you that the knowledge is sexual relations. That's how the Bible writers were. They were very, very crafty. But what I'm saying is the serpent just said, this is what the serpent said. When people said the serpent was evil and the serpent was the devil, the Bible never said that. The Bible just says the serpent was more cunning. That's it. You know what I mean? Because the serpents was always known to be wise. And this is the King James version, because they don't always use the word cunning. But it was just saying that he knew information that he probably shouldn't have been telling Eve. Just like if somebody come tell my daughter, look, if you let him do this, you know, So what we did is we know for a fact the information was about sex because the first thing he said to Eve was, "I will greatly multiply your sorrows and your conception." So he's saying that you're gonna be sorry about conception because it's gonna be painful. In pain you shall bring forth children. That's a fact of life. When you have children, before you ever had it, you would never known that if you never had children. But now it's telling you you're going to be sorry when you get conception because it's going to be painful. And it says your desire shall be for your husband. That's what happens when you get married. When a woman longs for a man once they have sex. And he shall rule over you because he becomes the more dominant. Where she was free before, now that's all he said. That's it. And to Adam, he said, because you have heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree, which it says, I commanded, saying you shall not eat of it. Now look up what shall means. Shall means should. He said, it's like a father. I'm telling you shouldn't do it, but if you do it, you're going to have some pain. It says, cursed is the ground for your sake. Not you. The ground means the ground. In toil you shall eat of it. So he's saying you're going to have to work hard you're going to have to grow your own food now. You're going to have to work for your food in all the days of your life because I'm your daddy. And if you having sex around here, buddy, you're going to have to go get your own. And so he says, both thorns and thistles shall bring forth you, and you shall eat the herbs of the field. The herbs are for healing. It says that in the Bible. In the sweat of your face, you shall bring bed. That means you got to beat up the mill and beat up the mill. Your wife gonna be there beating up the wheel, grinding it up so you can make flour, so that you can mix water and make the bread. For out of you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. So it sounds like a bunch of bad stuff, but all your dad was telling you was really gonna go down. The last thing it says in 32, therefore the Lord God sent, which means really Lord God is the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. You can just say the Father. Therefore the Lord God sent him out of the garden to till the ground from which he was taken. He was taken. When they had the fruit, it says their eyes of both of them were open and they knew that they were naked. But before then, it says that they saw that the tree was good for food and it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise. So she took the fruit and ate. That's what your wife is supposed to do. Your wife, she consumes something that opens her eyes and makes her more conscious. It told her that she seen the fruit was good. That means that nothing was wrong with her eyes. She was not blind. But when she ate the fruit, her eyes were open. That means that she was now aware, conscious. See what I'm saying? So this story, Adam and Eve, it says, Cain knew his wife and conceived and bore Enoch. God never forsake these people. You see what I'm saying? God was always for them even after they left the garden. So the person in the garden who stayed in the garden wasn't God. They heard him walking in the garden. They heard his voice. It says,
no, we don't agree. We don't agree on that. But I'll tell you this, man. I'll tell you. I was gonna finish my thing, but I actually looked at the time and I can't. But I'll tell you this: if I could tell you this, Rondale, as a compliment, if I did agree with your theology, which I do not, but if I did, I would really encourage you, as a friend of yours, to become a preacher. I think you have a lot of God-given ability. I think you're spewing a whole bunch of not truth there. However,
but it's all in the book though. So that's
no. In everything it's not the things you're saying. The technical things you're saying, I totally agree with. Well, how can I not agree with it? It's word for word the Bible. It's the perspective that you're laying over that. But that's not what I'm trying to say. You're a very, very gifted orator of the Word of God, and it's very passionate to you, and I like that. But I almost hope you don't do it because I don't agree with your theology. But as far as
my best friend like that too. My chance, the guy I talk to every day.
But you are a very gifted practitioner of the gospel. I honestly do. Just to leave you with this, what I actually think God's doing is He created this. I take him on his word, Ron. He says when he was done with creation, that was good. I think that's Edenic creation personally, and I think that's what we'll return to in the consummate kingdom. I think God doesn't do do-overs, so I think what he created in the garden is what he always intended. I think that's what we will return to, and I think what he means by that is the freedom to not be your own God. To many people, sounds like chalk on a chalkboard, but to me, it sounds like freedom. And I think that was the relationship that he had with the Edenic man. He was God, and I also believe that in his creation he did make them in severe likeness to. He says he makes him. He says he made creation in his likeness. That's a very, very powerful thing. And I think the reason that you see sin spin from the garden into humanity and just riddle and ravage like a cancer throughout humanity is it was never meant to be that way. It was never meant to be that way. But that's just a real quick synopsis of where we disagree theologically. All that to say, if I had more time, we could dive into it. I actually do got to go. I promised my wife I'd be done by 12:30. Fascinating conversation, Ron. You are a crazy, interesting person. All the more reason to start your YouTube channel and to take it seriously and to brand it. Because let me tell you, man, on a serious note, on a side note, that's the future. You know how much I've completely abandoned TV, but I listen to these fascinating people on YouTube with these YouTube channels that are just, they have these fascinating perspectives. I love it. I think it's the future. So the people that are out there right now doing a good job of branding their YouTube channel, doing a good job of, like, I think that's the future. If freaking evil Google doesn't shut the whole thing down, and if all these like free speech haters don't censor everything,
they definitely about to shut it down.
I know they are, man. And I'll tell you what, that's freaking me out. That should freak everybody out. But anyway, if they don't succeed at that, you could have a legitimate source of income, man, because I see these guys.
I'm gonna do Patreon, man. I see Patreon.
Exactly. You could do the whole thing. You do Patreon. You could do the ad revenues.
That's the thing. I'm a conversationalist, man. I'm more of a.
I know. That is when you're strong. You are strongest when you're in a conversation. But you got to find a way, like maybe like get a concept together every video and make them like 5 or 10 minutes and just deliver that concept and just work at it, because I think you could be really good at it. Or maybe this whole like, and again, I hesitate to tell you this because I actually think you're theologically wrong, but you're very good at it. You know, you should like, maybe that could be your whole thing, and you're just peddling this black theology and trying to like lay.
It's not black theology.
It is black theology. That's exactly what it is.
It's not black because anybody. It's not bias. It's not racial bias. It's all right.
But it's technically called black theology. I've read it. That's what you're spewing.
You said this yourself. Think about this, and I know you got to go, so we wrapping it up. But if you were an African American who was subjected to slavery, and then after that, Jim Crow and all of that, and you seen the most ill behaviors on the planet from the people who were impressing you, how is it in your right mind that you will say that I'm going to worship that God?
I think that's fair.
You can't say if it's absolute evil being, because the Bible says, look at the judge of the tree by its bark, by its fruit, not by its bark.
Yeah, but Ron, there's been slavery and it's taken many faces and it's taken many names.
Slavery in this Western Hemisphere is unlike anything that's ever been.
That's not true. It's not true. It's factually incorrect. It's factually incorrect.
People in honey, man. They was. Man, I've seen the stuff I've seen, bro. We don't even know. Like
slavery, Ron. I think slavery is
not about slavery. It's about the brutality, bro. It's about the evil. I mean, it's ugly, bro.
I agree. It's ugly. I mean, on that, you'll get no disagreement. But I don't think it's unique to this continent. If that's what you're saying, we disagree. If you're saying it's ugly, we agree.
No, brother, my brother. Listen, I'm just saying this last thing. What I'm saying is we are not supposed to take the oppressor's point of view. So we have been taking the oppressor's point of view. And that's fine. If a person wants to do that, that's fine. There's nothing against it. But once you become a free human being.
Who's the oppressor?
The oppressor, all right, do you understand that people.
But who are you meaning? When you say the oppressor, I'm just trying to clarify, like, who is the oppressor?
Well, in our situation, is those who subscribe to white supremacy. And that
who's that?
The church is the first one. If you know your research, you know your history. The slaves before they were sent into the ship, They were baptized, and they were processed by a priest. What I'm saying is, I've done the research. I went to Rome and Spain this year. Both of those things have to do with the Visigoths, the people who were actually what they call the Hispanos right now.
So you're considering them the white supremacy? Is that
No,
you're talking about the Vatican?
Oh, the Vatican is definitely
White
absolutely.
supremacy. So now like everything's white supremacy
You know,
now.
the
Like
Vatican is the Babylon. Vatican is Babylon the Great in the Bible.
Ron, here's what I
And
think, and you know I already know this about me, man, because we're candid. You know what I think about you, man? This is honestly what I think. Sometimes when I see a person that's been mistreated and abused, and then the abuse stops, years later, the greatest abuser and the greatest enslaver is that person's mind. They've never freed themselves from that. And I think that's seriously what happens to you a lot of times.
No,
You are the greatest enslaver of your own scenario. You hatch these plans that you think these things.
Look at my life. You got to look at my life and look at how I live. Like, I live free. I believe in
But
God.
your mind, Ron, your mind is so ensnared in this stuff.
This year alone, I didn't know I was going to be able to top last year as far as having a great year. This year has been the most phenomenal year of my life. God is active in my life. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I think you're doing great, man. You're traveling. You're killing it on the professional.
Nobody can convince me whether or not God is active in somebody's life. But this is all I'm saying to you. I'm free. I'm a free.
Yeah, of course you're free, Ron. And I'm not talking bad about you.
I don't have to believe. I don't have to believe in what I have. The status quo is saying that you got to believe this.
No, you don't. I don't believe in that either. I don't believe I'm a free thinking person too. What I'm saying to you is everything you quote me is accurate, but it can still ensnare you. Ron, I'll give you an example. My brother who's been in and out of jail stole thousands of dollars from me. I had a job one time. I was very successful. Stole thousands of dollars from me. It took me years, Ron. It took me years to get over my own enslavement to that experience, the anger, the bitterness. I saw it everywhere. It filled my life up. I think in many ways, people it's constant. It in your mind, it fills up every compartment of your life, even if you don't recognize it. I'm telling you this because you don't see it, but it's so apparent.
Yeah, because if you know how I operate though. You know me through conversation, so you know me.
Well, I know you're a kind. I've been around you like personally.
But I'm saying
you're kind. You're gentle. I'm not saying you're a bad person.
What I'm saying is I'm not bitter. I'm not a bitter man.
But when you talk about these things, it comes out.
If I gotta jump 10 feet, I'm the type of dude gonna go back and jump 10 feet.
But what I'm telling you, Ron, this thing, the others, the entities that are all like, that's not true.
You see them killing us out in the street, bro. I seen a man just the other day. The man was so scared of the cops, they pulled him over on his bike. He was scared. He looked like he was mentally ill a little bit, right? So you could tell. I knew the man was gonna run. You could tell as soon as he was like, "Oh no!" He seemed like he was mentally ill, like he was a little bit immature, and he was scared. And I could tell he was about to break for it. And I was like, "Oh no, man, don't do it." So he booked. They got him. They took his book back off, and he ran. Right? They didn't tase him. They shot his ass 2 times, killed his ass.
Now, no, Ron, look, the American people see this, and we know this. The American people see this. We know this is a problem.
Yeah. So how can you ignore it? You can
I'm not ignoring it, and nobody's ignoring it. The problem is that the people like yourself that rightfully draw attention to this. Then you have no interest in actual, like I've discovered this in conversation, because my intentions in having these conversations are pure, and I come to realize that the conversation is never about finding any solution. The conversation is never about that. That's not what you're interested in, and that's not what a lot of your ideological kin are interested in. You're just interested in, like, I don't even know what, because every time I ask for like an actual, because you have Americans like me and millions others that share in this concern.
I can't say, Brock, you need to do this. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
Well, that's not
there
necessarily,
is no
Ron. That's not
solution.
necessarily true, and it's
There
not true
is
that there's
no
nothing that you can do either. But this idea that you're gonna the solutions that I've heard from the people that are at least getting the microphones and stuff, those aren't solutions. They're not solutions. They're not solutions.
There aren't no solutions. I'm telling you. What do I got to say to you?
I think there are.
no
I think there are solutions. I don't know why you believe there aren't solutions. I believe
I'm
there
gonna
are
tell you why
solutions.
it's not. It's in doctrine. It's in doctrine. It's in the operating system. It's in the Windows.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
Well,
I don't think it's in the operating system. I don't.
It's in the operating system, man. They can't.
I just don't agree with that. I mean, I know what you. I know what you.
Look at the prison system. You think it's a coincidence? Oh, black people are just bad. That's the reason why they're 98%, 90% of the occupancy. That's easy to say, but it's not. It's because it's a system that we are living in that is funneling the people through that system, because that's the legal way of making a person a slave. So in today, there is more people incarcerated than that were actually enslaved at the height of slavery in the 1800s. I'm telling you, man, it's all
so what's the system? So what's the system?
The system is every aspect. I'm talking about even the division of the family. When I'm talking about when we're saying that you take out the father out of the household, you now tear away the foundation of the black family, which is the foundation of the black community. So you do all kinds of ways, everything you can think to keep the black man out of the family.
Yeah, but who?
Man, maybe not black. Just put it this way. What do you mean? The system. The people.
But I know. But I keep asking. Like, okay, so if I presented you a problem,
the system, though, everything, it's everywhere. Everywhere, from the banking system.
So what if I said to you? What if I said to you, just out of curiosity, just to give you a perspective of what I'm hearing? What if I said to you something like, for example, cops or whatever? Like, what if I say this? What if I create this scenario that you agree with? Because I agree with you. You already know I agree with you about that. But then I'm just like, it's everywhere. It's the system. What am I mean, what is a person supposed to do with that? It's so frustrating.
If you replay the conversation today, you will have various different situations that I gave you. You know what I'm saying? I gave it to you.
But they're all things I agree with. So what I'm trying to say,
you can't deny it. It's just
I'm not denying it. I'm asking you.
I know you're not.
I'm asking you, what's the system?
But what you're saying is, what you're looking for is this. It's the devil. And who's the devil? The devil is the white man. What I'm trying to say is, it's not even just the white man. It's in the black people.
No, I'm not looking for that. I wasn't looking for that. I'm just saying, you can't just.
What I'm saying is, it's in the system. It's Black Wall Street. Look at what happened with Tulsa, Oklahoma. The black people actually became very successful. They owned their own land. They educated themselves. They built a community. What happened is they felt like, because one guy got accused of raping or whatever a white woman, they went in there and they burned down the entire place. They didn't burn it down because of that. They wanted to burn it down because they resented the fact that these African Americans were building and living better than they were across the train tracks. So what I'm saying is, it's just like the lady that was the subject to that. What she says, you don't build anywhere where you're surrounded by people who are vehemently against your uprising. You see what I'm saying? That would be the dumbest thing on the planet to go. So we just seen what they would do. The first bombing in America was a successful, prosperous black community. Why would we do it again? What do you think is going to happen again? My grandma told me about, they used to play numbers back in the day. They outlawed that because there was too many people getting fat. You see
but who's saying? Okay, so the system, meaning the legal system. Is that what you're describing?
The legal system, the political.
So in other words, every entity in society, everything, public education, justice system, legal system, entertainment system, all they're doing is just trying to keep the black man down all the time. That's what they're doing. That's what they exist to do.
The foundation of this country was built off of the African slave. So when I say the black man is just the African. Okay, so that's why when we look at Africa,
but what I'm saying is that's actually what I'm supposed to believe. All these entities are just constantly waking up and just thinking about oppressing one race. I just
Look like this. Not just one race. They oppress everybody. Because if you look at the Middle East, why did we go in Iraq? Why did we go in Afghanistan? Because resources.
So people with brown skin.
Yeah, for the natural. Yeah, the inhabit.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Well, you look at the.
That's just too conspiratorial. It's just
no.
It is, man. It is.
Look at. All right, when Christopher Columbus landed in the Hispaniola, the Haiti and Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Do you know when he returned, he killed 20 million natives. That was just on the continent, that little island called Hispaniola. Can you imagine how many people died in North America? How many natives died in Central America? How many people died in South America? We're talking about hundreds of millions of
There's
people.
absolutely no historical proof for that whatsoever.
What? Oh, get out of here. This is
there isn't.
Facts, bro.
There isn't. There is no historical proof for 20 million Hispanics dying. There's no historical proof for that.
Not Hispanics. I'm talking about 20 million indigenous people and that's just in Hispaniola. That's just in the island where Haiti and
What do you? So what's your point here? That Christopher Columbus was a genocidal maniac? Is that your point?
Well, he just got it started, but he was genocidal maniac. I mean,
but Ron, you're seeing history through such a specific prism.
That he's not. I just went to Spain. I just seen the
Ron, I'm not telling you it's not. Well, I question some of this. I question some of those genocide numbers, but I'm not questioning the essence of your point. You're just you're seeing like this is what you're doing. You're going like this. Is that you're just seeing what you want to see. There has been bloodshed and torture and murder and genocide and imperialism from the dawn of time throughout cultures, throughout generations. This is not this like laser-like focus on African Americans.
Not 20 million people in like in 30 days. Not or whatever. He wasn't.
Ron, yes. Stalin, Mao killed hundreds of millions of people. Pol Pot killed an entire generation. These things are not unique to. I mean, Genghis Khan was considered one of the most genocidal maniacs in history.
Yeah, and where you think Genghis Khan came from? Where did Genghis Khan come from? You're right. Genghis Khan came from.
But I'm talking. But my point is, I could go on and on. My point is these. You're seeing what you want to see, and then you're blocking everything else out because you want to create.
I actually entertain that, brother. I researched Genghis Khan. I researched the Visigoths. I researched the barbarians.
But I'm not just talking about Genghis Khan. I'm talking about.
No, all of them. You know where they came from? They all came from the North Caucasian mountains.
This is just ridiculous, Ron. See what I mean? This is what I mean. It's like
tell me where they come from, Brock. Where did they come from?
Ron,
tell me. Where did they come from? Where was the Visigoths? Where were the Huns?
Ron, Ron, okay, fine. Ron, what about this? What about this one? The Mayans, right? The Mayans would literally hurl children off of tall buildings. Ron, but my point here is not to get specific. My point is that this behavior, this horrific behavior that I'm not justifying and I'm not trying to make excuses for, but you're just seeing it through such a cattle shooting human behavior into.
What it is, it's what I'm saying is uncomfortable, and I agree with that.
No. It's not, and I'm not denying it. You'll notice I'm not denying any of these things.
You brought up Genghis Khan, and
I brought up Pol Pot. I brought up Stalin. I brought up Lenin. I brought up a million. I can go on and on. The amount of genocidal murders. For example, I'll give you an example. The indigenous people. There's been new research on this. This came out of Harvard. The indigenous people used to war with each other in the most barbaric ways. They would decapitate each other. Bury the women neck deep and stone them. What I'm saying to you, Ron, is this thing you have where it's just the things that you're saying are true, but you're just telling like if this is the whole picture, you're constantly highlighting this, and that's my point. That's poison. That's poison.
I'm just telling you, like you said. I'm telling you, if you piece together history, which I love to do. You know, and this is just my pastime. Some people like to watch the NFL. Some people like to watch. I like to piece together history in biblical text. That's what I like to do. You can ask my wife. I go in the bathroom 2-3 hours and just disappear, and I'll be in my stuff. But because I piece together history, I can see. I actually study. Like I said, I study the barbarians, the Huns, Genghis Khan.
I believe you.
The Khazars. Are you familiar with the Khazarians?
No.
Because those are the not a lot of people. That's a secret country, but they converted to Judaism, and not a lot of people know that.
Of course they did.
But this is all history. This is all facts. This is not like theory. This is stuff that if you don't believe what I say, you can go Google Visigoths. Google.
No, I do believe you. I do believe you. I do believe you.
Yeah,
it's just fascinating to me that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years of human history, and the only atrocities that seem to ping Rondale's radar fit into these very narrow narrative. It just so happens to be, it always comes down to the Jews, and there's always some evil, and I'm just thinking to myself, this is really convenient how this is all cattle shooting and turnstile.
There's some guys around here that be talking about aliens. The earth has been invaded by aliens and stuff like that, right? Well, I say, why would I be caring about some extraterrestrials when there's people on the planet that's already colonializing and killing off massive groups of, there's species of human beings that are no longer in existence because of the genocide that's going on. So they keeping us thinking about the Hitler thing, right? And that is bad if you're trying to kill 7 million people. But 7 million people ain't nothing compared to what they did in the Western Hemisphere. So don't come tell me about 7 million when you took out 20 million in one island. And if it's 20 million people on the island, then I'm imagining what is on the continent. What was on the continent of South America? And how many people who died in that situation?
Ron, is this even a possibility? Is it a possibility? Do you entertain the possibility that human beings, since the dawn of man, and of course this goes back, ironically enough, full circle to our conversation about Edenic views on Edenic sin, but is it possible that this is deep in our nature? And these divisions and these calculated ways that we compartmentalize ourselves up are all just outcroppings of that. The instinct for power over another man, the instinct to take what is his, the instinct to imperialize and commit genocide and tribalize and all these things. Could it be that these things transcend color, race, nationality, and religion, and are deep within the human soul? And thus, that's why you see the same behavior wherever there is man, wherever there's the congregation of man, wherever there is the assembly of man. So is it possible that this is not nearly as conspiratorial towards one race, and possibly that this is just a universal aspect to humanity, which, by the way, I'm tipping my hand. That's what I actually believe. That's what I think is happening. Well, that is not to downplay individual sins. For example, I have a friend who's Cambodian, and I read a biography on Pol Pot. Pol Pot killed every human being over 35, and he has a unique connection to that particular genocide. But that does, and I'm not taking that from him, just like I'm not taking your unique history from you. But I'm saying, if he were to start coming up with conspiratorial things about how everything has to do with his Cambodian loss and all the people are having out for the Cambodians, and it starts to sound crazy, Ron. It sounds conspiratorial.
They actually did try to wipe out all the Cambodians.
What?
They actually did try to wipe out all the Cambodians and all the people in Thailand, man.
Pol Pot actually wiped out Cambodia.
It was actually they were holding hands. So they had the soldiers hold hands, hand by hand, systematically walking through the forest to find the Cambodians.
I know. I read all about it. I know. But my point here is, I'm just lifting the circumstance off of history just to show you that what if my friend who's a Cambodian constructed this whole like thing, everything's about. That's what you sound like to me. You everything's.
That's fine because like I said, I don't.
But is there any chance that are you even allowing the slightest room for the fact that that that's happened to you, and that the things that you're saying aren't. So in other words, truth, everything you said is true, and everything you said can be Googled. But Ron, there is a thing called lie of omission, and I think that's what you do a lot. You're lying by omission. You're leaving out.
Lie of omission means that you're omitting evidence so that you can perpetuate your
and
lie.
that's what I think you're doing. I think that's what you're doing.
Are you serious? I'm myth busting. That's what I'm doing.
No, but what I mean is,
telling me, for an example, you tell me that Adam and Eve is the first man and woman on the planet.
That's not what I said. I don't even believe that.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, for an example, you tell me that Adam and Eve the first man on the planet, and then I go into Genesis and I show you where Cain and Abel went out into the land of Nod and found him a wife. And I show you in your own Bible, and then the person tells me that my view is twisted, then I would say, well, that's fine. You can believe that my view is twisted, but I showed you in your Bible.
Yeah, but Ron, that's not the point. That's not the point. See, this is a very distinctive thing. That's not the point at which the contention would come.
Saying that what I'm saying is true, but you got a problem of with
no. Ron, do you ever see that picture? And you should know. Do you ever see that picture where it's this whole picture, and then when you highlight this circle in the middle of the picture, it looks like a guy stabbing another guy in the foot. But when you come back to the whole picture, you see that that's not what's happening. I'm making the case that that's what you're doing. You're not technically saying anything wrong, but the conclusions that you're drawing are not accurate. That's the point. So it's a very distinct.
My best friends say the same thing, but you got to be careful. This is one thing I say. You got to be careful that you're not subjected to your own words.
Hey, fair enough. And you know what? That's a good point, because I think this is what I'm willing to admit. I don't think it's just you doing it. I think everybody does this, and that's the point. That's why God wants us to edify each other, and that's why when you come to with all these different perspectives, you sharpen off the rough edges. If you're just left, and I'm going to reiterate, I think this is what you've done. But if you're just left to spin this like an echo chamber in your own mind and conclude all these different things without the refinement of other perspectives, I think you can spiral into some really dangerous places. And the whole time you can justify it being true because it is true. For example, I think and I'm not equating you at all. I think you're a good man. But the enemy in God's word, the enemy, he would always use truth, but he would only use truth. He would wield truth in a deceptive way. And I think that's what?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I say you have to ask questions. The Bible said there's going to be false prophets, right? It tells you all over the place. So it said that
I guess the argument becomes who's the false prophet?
Who's the false prophet? So what I'm saying is if I'm showing you, that's why I committed myself to this. Only deal with what's in the word so that they can't deny you. So the Jehovah's Witnesses, when he left last week, he couldn't call me nothing, because everything that I will it's gonna be all fact.
Everything you said is biblically watertight. It's the conclusions that you draw afterwards that I take contention with.
But the only reason why the conclusion is just the conclusion.
You're taking the word of God and you're accurately, which is why I think you should preach. But I just don't want you to do any of the conclusion stuff. I think you should preach the word of God. But then
here we go. You know,
but I would love to see you at a pulpit, but I only want you to stick to the word. I don't want you doing any more. I don't want you extrapolating to all these conclusions. I just want you to.
That's Nat Turner right there. That's the story of Nat Turner. Like, you can read it, but be careful what you say.
Seriously though, to compliment you, you are very, very gifted. You should find yourself a pulpit. I almost want to bite my tongue.
No, man, I'll get crucified if I get in a pulpit, man. They'll crucify me. My own people will crucify me.
Well, you do have some out there thoughts, but I still think, one more chance, one more push for your YouTube page, because regardless, I'll tell you what you do offer, Ron. If you had a YouTube page and I didn't know you, I would totally subscribe to your YouTube page. You want to know why? Because you would offer me a perspective. You would articulately offer me a perspective that I would not get anywhere else, and that's got worth to me. Regardless of whether I agree or don't agree, that's got worth to me, because I like a full palette. I like to see from a full palette. I'm a grown man. I can think for myself, but I'm better. And I cannot reiterate. I think you could really offer that. Hey man, I always enjoy myself. Great conversation, Ron. Hey, this will be up on my channel, which you can then download if you want, if you ever have any use for it, and use it at will. All right, buddy?
All right. Have
a good night. Take it easy, man. Great time, Ron. Take it easy.
All right, peace.
See you, man.